But I guess we've already started. Father Ben, welcome.
Good to be here.
I don't need to introduce you to most of our viewers, but for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm a Catholic priest for the Archdiocese of Sydney, ordained in August 2022, so I'm approaching my second anniversary, and I love being a priest. I didn't always think I'd be a priest. There were parts and times in my life where I thought I was going to be married and have a family, and that testimony's been told time and time again. So but the one thing that I keep telling people is I almost don't remember what life was like before. And I think that's a great way of...
How old were you when you became a priest, when you were ordained?
Ordained, I was 38. Yeah, 38 years old.
How does that fare relative to sort of the average age of ordination?
Bit older, a little bit older.
Mm.
So, for example, one of my classmates, Father Eden from the Canberra-Goulburn Diocese, 10 years my junior, and we entered seminary at the same time.
Mm.
So, generally, you get guys in their early to mid-20s, generally, but there's always like an outlier. There's a guy in his late 30s or a guy that just turned 19 and they see something special in him, so they say, all right, we'll give you a go in seminary.
Mm. Yeah, also my head was cut off. Excuse the interruption. Yeah, so it was relatively later. What were you doing before you became a priest?
I was in a family business. So I was in architecture and design, in sales, mosaics, ceramics, all sorts of things. And
wasn't it a tile business? You said?
Tile business,
Oh.
yeah. So 98% of our business was all about architects and designers.
Mm.
So working with very creative people. I was in that role for 10 years. Grew in the role, grew in the business, family business. My cousin and I worked well. I know that's not always the case with family.
Yeah.
But we worked well together.
Yeah.
And it was actually harder to tell the family that I worked with than it was to tell my parents that I was thinking about priesthood and I'm going to join the seminary, therefore I can't work here anymore.
By that point, you're probably spending more time with them than you are your own family anyway.
Correct.
So
yeah,
that's big. And so what do you do now? What's your role now in the church?
So I'm an assistant priest at St. Mary's Cathedral in Sydney, and I'm also the Master of Ceremonies for the Archbishop of Sydney.
And what's the MC do?
He directs the traffic. So make sure everything is flowing, ultimately to give the Archbishop an opportunity to prayerfully enter into any liturgy that he is the main presider of, because there's a lot to think about. So if he doesn't have to think, what's my next move, he can just prayerfully enter and I can give the direction. I prepare the liturgies, so I run things by the parishes that he might be visiting or the organizations he's visiting. So pretty unique role. I didn't think I'd ever be in a role like this, and I'm fairly new at it still, learning every day, but I'm loving it.
So sort of like the chief of staff during liturgy and masses, make sure everyone's doing their job.
Yeah.
Make sure the Archbishop knows where he's going.
The traffic controller. That's it.
And how long have you been in that role?
Since Easter Monday. So a few months now.
So still new.
Still new, still learning. This week, or by the time this goes to air, it'll probably have passed, but my first ordination this week. So emceeing an ordination, there's a lot of liturgical movements and different aspects to it, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of reading the last week or two.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Watching a lot, reviewing a lot, thinking, visualizing, thinking how I'm going to make it work reverently, prayerfully, so that the young men being ordained, they don't have to worry about anything and the Archbishop doesn't have to worry about anything. So there's a rehearsal tomorrow and you do all of that. Yeah.
Well, for our listeners, you and I, we've known each other for, when did I meet you at the Catholic Center at UCID?
Yeah.
What year of the seminary were you? You came with Father Eden.
Yeah. The two of us were paired up. UCID.
2018,
chaplaincy.
2017?
Bit later, I think. It was before COVID.
Well, I dropped out in 2019, so it can't have been too much later.
It may have been 18, 19.
Yeah.
Well,
18, 19.
I would have been fourth year seminary. I entered 2019.
Yeah.
First semester 2019, I think it was.
Yeah, well, it's been a good 5 years. I remember when you guys rocked up, you were just burning to get involved, start getting involved in classes. You'd sit down and interrupt people's lunches and challenge their life trajectory. It was good. And I remember the only thing I could think is I can't believe this solid Maronite guy was becoming a Roman Catholic priest.
Yeah. So
I said some things to you at the time.
Shall we get that out of the way now so we can just get on with the show?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm not sure if I can move past it, but let's do it.
Tell me. So I'm a product of circumstance. Okay. So I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church. That's when my parents took my brother and I. It was never a personal thing with the Maronite Church. There was never a vendetta or anything negative.
Yeah.
It's just where I grew up. It's what I knew.
Yeah.
And so when I started to discern the priesthood, that's all I knew was the priest that I saw every Sunday offering the Mass, funerals, weddings, baptisms, confessing. It's all I knew. And so when I started to discern, that's what I was discerning. So, yeah.
Did you have to get permission from the Maronites?
I did. I did. I just, out of courtesy, I went to Sayedna and I let him know this is what my life's been about and where I'm going with things. And he asked a question every Maronite asks, why?
Yeah.
Why? I just said, product of circumstance.
Yeah.
It was never anything personal. It's just where I grew up. It was the environment I grew up in.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. It's not like I was like the head of his youth group and decided to become a Roman Catholic priest.
Yeah.
That was never the case.
You've explained this to me like 4 times, and I think I've called you a traitor 3 of those times. Yeah. So I do probably owe you an apology.
No need.
For another day.
No need.
Yeah.
So what I am is I will always be Maronite.
Yeah.
So I haven't renounced any of that.
Yeah.
But I'm a Maronite, but I'm serving in the Roman Catholic Church.
But you're bi-ritual.
So I'm bi-ritual.
Have you celebrated a Maronite Mass yet?
No, I started learning.
Divine offering?
I started learning. Then ministry got in the way, and one day. Satan has given me permission, but I haven't said that one Mass yet publicly. So one day.
The time will come.
Time will come.
And so I remember when we met, I'd sort of started to observe a lot of people coming through the seminary and towards the end of their seminary years entering the priesthood, far more sort of zealous, ready to serve. I don't like to use the word conservative because it has political connotations, but a more traditional outlook. Orthodox, yeah. An Orthodox, Orthodox with a little O, just to be clear. Yeah. An Orthodox or more traditional sort of streak to them.
Right teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, right teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was an observation like, man, we got some young guys coming through. I mean, some younger than others. Not to say you were old, but
a little bit. Entered the seminary at 31.
Yeah.
So I'd lived a bit of life.
You'd lived a bit of life.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing because there's this, it's more of a problem in the Maronite community, I think, where I think sort of back in the day, it was sort of like, oh, you become a priest when you've got nothing else going for you sort of thing. And
maybe I had nothing going for me.
I don't know. It sounded like you were part of a pretty successful business. You were making some coin.
Thank God.
Like you weren't exactly on the street or...
Everything was happening in life, but God just came calling and I just couldn't ignore that.
Yeah. And like you had dated girls before, you'd lived a normal life, you'd been in relationships.
Yep.
I think all of that's important context. Like, because I remember as a joke once I told, I think my auntie when she came from Lebanon, I was just listening to like a hymn or something and she said, Francis, why are you listening to a hymn? I said, you never know, I might become a priest. And she replied with di'onak, which means like, what a waste. And it's like this mentality sort of exists of like, a priesthood's for something, something for people or men who don't really have much else going for them, which is a horrible outlook, of course.
Yeah. I've had people say, 7 years in the seminary, you could have become a doctor. I'm like, but I didn't want to become a doctor.
Yeah.
I wanted to become a priest and serve the people of God.
Yeah.
I wanted to help sanctify souls. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I did it. I didn't want to become a social worker. I didn't want to become a psychologist. I wanted to become a priest.
Mm.
And I believe God was calling me to that. And by the way I was feeling all those years through seminary up to this point now, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's a peace that no one can take away from you.
Mm.
I had my bad days in seminary. I've got my bad days now as a priest, but there's a peace there. And that's when you can tell you've made the right decision. You've followed what God has called you to do, because that's what he promises you. I'll give you a peace. I'll give you a happiness that the world can't offer you. And I'm living that. I'm blessed every day. I thank God every day that I get to live that now.
I think it's an important point which can also be applied to those in whatever they're doing in their life. You can still have bad days. You can still struggle, but it's the peace that sort of indicates to you whether you are where you are meant to be.
Yes.
You know, besides simply always being joyful and happy about it. And I mean, I can imagine you probably have some exhausting days.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, we're all human. Sometimes I just feel like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like that. And I get that. And that's why I think the celibate priesthood is most fitting, okay? Without getting into that debate about, married clergy and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, when I get to say my prayers, have a shower, and be on my own a little bit, that replenishes me for the next day, And it also prepares me, like I've got the bat phone tonight, I call it the bat phone. It also prepares me that if I'm called to go into the hospital at 2 a.m. to anoint someone dying, I'm ready, I'm up, I can go. I don't have to worry about waking up the kids or, waking up the wife in bed next to me.
Yeah.
I can go. So.
Does that happen often, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how many times a month?
The certainty, it's the two certainties in life, death and taxes.
Yeah. Do you pay taxes?
Next question. Next question.
There's just one certainty for you, Abuna.
No, but that's
no. But does it happen often?
It does, but we're not the full-time chaplains at cathedral, so we share it. There's 4 priests, so we share it. I'm on this once or twice a week.
So it's one phone essentially, and that just rotates between priests. Okay, that makes sense.
But like a place like St. Vincent's Hospital that has the public and the private, that needs a full-time chaplain. Because you got the Sacred Heart palliative care across the road as well. So all of you need someone full-time, which we're currently in the middle of looking for a priest to be there full-time. But I mean, this is the life God's called me to. I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, back to the whole sort of more Orthodox streak that I'd observed. Like growing up, I actually spent a lot of time in a Roman Catholic church that was sort of more local to where I was. So it was sort of all I knew in a sense. And then I spent some time at a Maronite church, which I'm still at. But the sort of experience I had, especially in the Roman Catholic Church, and there's a big difference, I think, in how the communities are formed. The Maronite Church is far more dense. It's far more cultural, and so it has sort of other factors in it. But my experience in the Roman Catholic Church was, I didn't realize until later, quite watered down in many ways. And it was, for lack of a better word, quite cringy. A lot of cringy things happened at Mass, ironically to bring in young people and not so surprising, deterred young people.
Yep.
So what do you think happened for the church to end up in that state in the first place? Obviously the answer is it's the boomers' fault, but we need a little bit more. We need a little bit more information than that. And what do you think? I guess the next part of that would be, how did you guys, that it seemed to be forming this almost, revival? How did you guys come to be so sort of orthodox in the faith?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think the first thing was there were great abuses after Vatican II. Great abuses. The documents of Vatican II are beautiful documents. Legitimate council, changes that needed to be made. But in a time of change, it's the easiest time for there to be abuse. It's the easiest time for the devil to sow confusion in a time of change, in a time of evolving. Yeah? So, for example, the Mass as we know it today, as most people will know it in their parishes, was not the intention of what Vatican II put down. Okay? So they wanted masses to go from being in Latin to the vernacular. Fine, good.
Vernacular meaning the language
of the place.
Of the place, yeah.
Okay, fine, great. In nowhere in those documents did they say, we want you to play guitars and drums. We want the music to be folkish. We want lay people up on the sanctuary. Never said anything like that. But what happened when all of this wasn't properly processed, wasn't properly learnt, integrated? Abuse happens.
Mm.
And so you see the 60s, 70s, 80s just go from the traditional Latin Mass to what we call now the Novus Ordo, the new order of the Mass, which is beautiful when it's done reverently. But when was the last time you saw a reverent Novus Ordo Mass?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, that's for sure.
It's very rare, very rare. So thank God, you'll see it at St. Mary's Cathedral, okay? And there are some priests and I love the fact that priests just do it by the book. They don't have to worry about little interpretations and, little remixes of things. And so that happened. And I grew up with a lot of that. I grew up with a lot of the abuse, the liturgical abuse and the Wiggles style masses and, and that's why I stopped going. There was no depth. There was nothing.
You stopped going to Mass entirely?
Yeah. So when I finished high school, pretty much stopped going. Because what was my experience? My experience was a fluid, bipolar Mass every week. I didn't know what I was going to get every week.
Mm.
What choir was on of the 6 choirs that your parish has? Is it the rock band choir? Is it the choir where people can't actually sing, but they call themselves a choir, and this is supposed to elevate our hearts and minds to God when they sing? Like, there was a real lack of backbone there. I'm sorry, if you can't sing, I'm not going to let you sing. Sing from the pews. But we're not going to put a microphone in front of you if you've got no musical talent. I'm sorry. Preaching became interactive.
Oh.
Question and answer time.
Can't stand it.
Yeah, and we know that this happens in multiple places.
Everywhere.
Where that's not what preaching is about. You're supposed to be able to dive into the Word of God. You would just proclaim the gospel, the good news. And now you're asking a person who's sitting in the second pew what they thought the message was supposed to be. How about you tell us, Father, what the message is and relate it to what suffering I'm going through in my life right now? How about you do that for me? No. All of it. So it was just a time where if you wanted to hold on to young people, you were doing all the wrong things to hold on to them. And then, as I joke about all the time, every young man I met in the seminary basically went out and did it on their own. And what I mean by that is they had their own interior conversion. They actually said, I want to learn more about my faith where it hasn't been taught to me before. And that was my story. Like, I remember going to talks that Perusia Media would hold, like a decade ago.
Yeah.
Apologetic talks, sexual ethic talks.
Well, what sort of sparked all of that for you? Because you said after high school you sort of stopped going.
Yeah. So
was there a specific turning point, or just over time you just became more interested?
There was a turning point. So it was actually when I was with my ex-girlfriend, and my brother approached me and said, well, how do you want to live the rest of your life? If you're serious about this girl, you're going to marry her. What do you want to do? Yeah, we'll get married in a church. We'll have a family. We'll baptize the kids. We'll do all the things that mum and dad did. I said, well, why aren't you doing it now? Start now. No time like the present.
Mm.
And that just flipped a switch in me. So I started very slowly just going back to Mass. Wasn't receiving the Eucharist because I can't remember being taught that if you're in a state of mortal sin, you shouldn't receive the Eucharist. Can't remember being taught that. Maybe, and God forgive me if a teacher did, but I can't remember that. All I remember was holding one of the streamers that was coming out of the gospel for a procession into Mass one Sunday for like my
I'd almost forgotten about those streamers.
Yeah, oh my goodness, what were they thinking? And they still do it to this day, some of them. They just don't get it. Anyway, that started the conversion. And one of the first apologetic talks I ever heard was Dr. Robert Haddad.
Legend, yeah.
And he was talking about biblical typology, how the Old Testament
prefigures the New Testament.
And the New Testament fulfills the Old. And I was just blown away. I need more. And so I'd clear Perusia Media. We joke about it all the time. I'd clear them of all their resources, every event they had. Because I was a road rep, being in the tile industry. I'm on the road 6 hours a day. So I've got CDs in my car. I'm listening to apologetic talks.
The old school Perusia CDs.
Yeah, that's it. I was doing all of that and I was just growing and growing and growing. It got to the point where as much as I loved my community where I grew up, I needed more when it came to the liturgy. I needed more. I needed reverence. I needed to be able to walk into a place and the focus had to be on God. Now that sounds odd, doesn't it? You should walk into a Catholic church, know where a tabernacle is, and know that everyone there will bend the knee at the name of Jesus. We should know that. A lot of Catholic churches don't have that. And so I started going to 2 masses on a Sunday. I'd go to my parish mass, which was where all my community was. And then in the evening, I'd go to another mass that said the Novus Ordo to the T. Exactly by the rubrics of the missal. The preaching was solid, the serving was solid, the music wasn't a polyphony chant, but it was just good hymns sung by a half-decent choir. But everything about that mass just drew me in. So I think that we went on our own journey. Young men like me were the response to the failed experiment of the boomers. It was like, this is not in any way going to get anyone back to church. And it never did. It was something that suited their tastes at the time. And you see it, how much it's filtered into our society today.
Yeah.
Every mass is according to the personality of the priest. Every mass is according to who makes the most noise at the parish council. Every mass has to have some kind of add-on or something that, because apparently the Eucharist isn't enough.
Yeah.
So I was over it. And it wasn't like a personal vendetta or anything. I'm not like, I'm going to become a priest so I can fix these problems. No. I had a genuine encounter with the Lord. His mercy hit me like a semi-trailer.
Yeah.
His mercy and his love for me. And the more I meditated on the way he just laid his life down for me and my sins and for humanity, that hit me. And that's something I like every single day. I meditate, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Only say the word and my soul shall be healed. Like that's what I pray, not only in the Mass, but every time. So that's what actually got me back in. Then I had a solid seminary formation. Unlike the Royal Commission, who claimed that we were walking around in satans, swinging incense at lunchtime. It was a very solid and balanced.
What do you mean they claim that?
So there was
the story there?
So when all the sexual abuse stuff was happening, so this, 2016, I'm in my first year at seminary, okay? All the sexual abuse stuff is coming to light now. There was a Royal Commission that took place, and we had seminary formators that were interviewed by the commission about what could have gone wrong. How does the seminary form young men these days to ensure that none of this stuff ever happens again? And the report to me was there was a boomer religious that said that seminaries are toxic places. They walk around in their satans. They're obsessed with incense. And yeah. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, right.
And it couldn't have been further from the truth. this is going back years now, but I remember a formator saying that's such a shame that this old bloke said that, because he probably hasn't set foot in a seminary for 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the boomer response and the abuse in the liturgy was a heavy-handed reaction to the traditional Latin Mass, but they just went too far in one direction. I love the traditional Latin Mass. I was hoping that one day, I was going through seminary before Traditionis Custodes came out, which was the ban on the Latin Mass for anyone ordained after that, the date of that document. I wanted to learn it. I wanted to offer it.
Now you can't.
I can't do it. Not the end of the world.
Is there no way you can? Like,
No.
Can you get permission, or it's just like it's
there
not
may
happening?
be some kind of express permission if there was a need, but I don't think so.
What was the intent behind that?
I don't know. My own personal opinion, I think it was a heavy-handed response to something that wasn't universal. You know, you go anywhere around the world and there are some communities that are either really full on in one way or another. It doesn't have to be traditional. Look, you can be uber liberal. I mean, look at what we heard about Newtown with all of the LGBT masses that were going on there.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that priest excommunicated? Why wasn't he slapped across the wrist and told you can't do that? The mass is the mass. It's universal.
Yeah.
So like all of that kind of makes me think a little bit. And I'm like, okay, fine. The answer, you did what you did, all good. But like that's all there. And there are communities that'll go way too far. And then there are good, faithful communities, which I actually went to before I entered seminary. I went to Maternal Heart Lewisham. I got to know those priests there. I got to see that mass in its beauty and glory. And I thought to myself, there is something sacred here. And you go into those communities and they're the most thriving.
They are, especially the young families. And
contrary to popular belief, they're normal people. They're not radicals. They're normal, everyday, hardworking families. So I think that there was a heavy-handed response to that, which is why we got all of the abuses we got coming out of Vatican II, okay? Now you've got the opposite. They're holding on for dear life. They're holding on for dear life, trying to keep the Mass the way they want it, trying to keep it like the liturgical abuses, creativity, emphasis off the Eucharist. They're trying their best to hold on to it. But as every single statistic will tell you right here and now, young people don't want that anymore. They never wanted it to begin with.
It. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's funny that it was, and we have to be mindful here. Not every boomer turned into the joke Susan from the parish council.
Yeah.
Not every boomer turned into that. I have so much respect for so many elderly people who actually survived that time in history.
And they kept it afloat.
It's because of them that we still have traces of tradition and the beauty of the liturgy.
Yeah, of course.
The way we do today.
Yeah.
So we have to be fair. But as we know, the minority, the ones that make the most noise, often get the results. Now, do priests have a part to play in this? Yes, they do. Because they could have put these people in their places and said, hold on a second, this is our most sacred form of worship. We're not mucking around with this. We've got to learn it properly. We've got to understand what the changes are asking in the Nova Sordo. Some priests went to that length. Other priests didn't.
Well, I've heard some stories of like priests who started at a parish and they were almost told what they can and can't do by their parish council. And some of them were just like, no, that's not how things work around here.
Or it's never, because...
and it shouldn't be the case. It was never meant to be some democratic little committee and they all raise their hand and vote how they're going to practice the liturgy.
Yeah, spot on.
But that's what started to happen.
Yeah.
You know, there's a parish near me, still till now. So I'll only go there if I can't make Maronite Mass because it's close to where I live. And right at the end of the Mass, before the final blessing, before it's over, they have a segment, we're going to call it a segment because that's what it is, of good news sharing. And the priest just roams around.
Isn't that nice?
The priest just roams around and is like, all right, good news sharing. who's got good news.
Is this in the Mass?
In the Mass, in the church, before it's over, you know? So after communion's finished, this is what we're doing. And, some kid will raise their hand. Last week it was my sister's birthday, and everyone claps. Oh, that's nice. And then some guy will put his hand up, like, I survived a heart attack last month. Oh, that's... And
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. No, but that's actually happened. One of them, and just everyone's putting up their hand and sharing different good news, and everyone claps for them. And the first time this happened, like, I was seeing red. I just couldn't believe what was happening. And for those listening, you might just think, like, what's the big deal? Like, okay, they're sharing good news, like it's a community. It's because when things like this start to happen in the Mass, it's almost like, where do you draw the line of what can and can't happen firstly? The second thing is, when you enter a church, you're supposed to transcend to somewhere where you have not been the rest of the week, assuming you're going once a week. Like when you go to St. Mary's Cathedral and there's a liturgy on, even if you're not Catholic, if you're not Christian, we put this out to the viewers, go to St. Mary's Cathedral while there's a liturgy. If you're not Christian at all, just sit in the back. Sit wherever you want. And you will feel like there's something above what we are. Call it supernatural, call it God. You feel something. You don't get that when everyone's putting up their hand and talking about how, they made their local soccer team during the Mass.
Yeah.
But that's still till now. They still do that.
And you know what? I love the fact that the community are willing to share their good news. So that if I was the priest at that parish, that's what we should be doing over a yarn, having a tea and coffee after Mass.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how you build community. But what are you doing in the most intimate time with our Lord, who you've just received body, blood, soul, and divinity into your body? That should be a time of prayer and reflection and thanksgiving. But instead, you got to hear about everyone's good news stories or prayer petitions. That's not part of the Mass. It takes away from it. It's like one of the things that I remember being taught in the seminary, when you prepare a homily, you pray about it, you think about the time that you're living in, the cultural climate, you look to others that have said it and will say it better than you 10 times out of 10 in the church fathers, and you look up some commentaries, you help yourself do it. But if there's going to be a joke in your homily, which a lot of people love apparently, I don't. I'm anti-joke. You'll never get a joke out of me in Mass.
Interesting.
I'm anti-joke. That's what they're going to remember from the homily. They're going to remember the joke.
Is that why you're anti-joke?
Yeah. They're going to remember the joke that you told. I'm anti-joke because you should be giving and feeding people with the word of God.
Were you taught this in seminary, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what?
So this was in a preaching class.
Okay.
If you've got some kind of wit or joke or something that's going to take people's attention away, or it's that memorable that they're not going to remember what the rest of the homily was about, don't do it. Save it for another time.
It's actually really interesting that that's being taught to all seminarians. This isn't something you picked up along the way yourself.
Well, this will be dependent on what lecturer a seminarian has.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was very blessed. I had very solid formation.
Yeah.
So we were told about these little things. We were told, if you're gonna be vulnerable enough to preach on a particular topic, go into your own woundedness and talk about something that's relevant that might touch another person's heart that weekend. Don't undo it by being a clown. Let them walk away having been nourished by the word of God, having been nourished by the Eucharist, and being challenged and loved by the words that you offered that Sunday. That's the Mass experience.
It makes it worse that the joke usually doesn't relate to the message either. It's just like, today's Christian joke, which I probably found online on a page with 1,000 of them. I went to a Mass during the Easter weekend, and one of the priests told 2 jokes. Like he set up a whole joke.
Oh, very nice.
Dropped the line, and he's like, okay, I've got another one. And he went again.
Just in case you didn't like the first one. I'll give you a second one. It's Easter, I'll give you a bonus.
I've always found them cringy, but I like the reason you give there because it does take away.
Yeah.
You know?
And this is the thing about the Mass, is that it's the source and summit of our worship, because the Eucharist is what we receive.
Yeah.
But the Mass is not supposed to be your feel-good experience. That's what too many people make it these days. The Mass isn't supposed to be something where we put in our fake smiles every Sunday and we walk around like this and we pretend that there's nothing going on in our lives. We bring our brokenness into the Mass and we ask Jesus for healing and strength. That's what he gives us, because he will inspire us through his word, and then he will strengthen us through his body, blood, soul, and divinity. Now, if you're going to cheapen that or think that that's not good enough, that you have to tell a joke or that you have to add something to the Mass to make it better and more appealing to people, then you just don't get the Mass. The holy sacrifice. It's us that has to go and do the work. That's what liturgy is work. We go, we take ourselves, we make the effort, we participate. So there's a long-winded response to that question that you asked, but I think we're actually seeing a revival.
Yeah,
I agree. Not just in young men joining seminary, but in young women joining religious orders. Sadly, not in Australia, but they're going overseas to join the Dominicans, the Franciscans, because the orders that we've had in Australia have unfortunately lost their identity. And you got to call a spade a spade. You look at our very first Australian saint, St. Mary of the Cross McKillop. Pray for us. What's become of her order? The Josephites, not much.
What has become of them?
Well, no more living in community. They lost the habit. They don't wear the habit anymore. There's not really an identity anymore. The charism, gone. I think they need a reform. Imagine the reformed Josephites. Bring back the habit. Get into it like she's our first saint. And it's an order that doesn't have vocations anymore.
It should be the biggest order in Australia, really.
They lack identity. And that's why we've got our young, faithful women that desire identity. Like they're going overseas to join the Sisters of Life. They're going overseas to join the Dominicans. God bless them. Good on you. Do that. But we're seeing that. So places that have tried, orders that have tried to get with the times have died out. Because as the Venerable Fulton Sheen says, if you wed yourself to the spirit of one age, you'll be a widow in the next.
Wow. If you wed yourself to the spirit of one age, you'll be a widow in the next. Wow.
It's true. It's like fashion. It just comes in and out, in and out. It dies. But the church is timeless, ageless. Will go on forever. Look at these orders that have just persisted in time. They've got a solid charism. They've got an identity about them.
The Dominicans are a great example.
Great example.
Many of the Franciscans.
Yeah. And you look at the priesthood now. Like on average in Sydney, we're very blessed. We are dropping 2 years the average age. So we're becoming a younger presbyterate.
Very good sign.
Great sign. And that, I think, is due to the very good things that the late Eminence Cardinal George Pell, put in place. Pray for us, Eminence. We miss you.
We're going to get to him as well.
And a lot of what our current Archbishop Anthony Fisher has done and has supported us in doing. So there are great signs. But there's just this underlying group that seems to be resisting this in the church for some reason.
Yeah.
If I can tell you a quick story, Francis. Last year I went to World Youth Day, and I was the chaplain to the Sydney Catholic Schools, Western Region schools. So I had Freeman, Clancy, Good Samaritan, all the Year 10 students. Great bus. Had a few teachers on the bus. And these kids had never, and I wrote a Catholic Weekly article about this when I returned. These kids had never in their life been to Mass every single day, which is what you do when you go to World Youth Day. You have a mass every day.
Yeah.
Some of these kids hadn't experienced Eucharistic adoration. So they hadn't experienced that. It was very interesting to see their responses to the serious stuff. And the way that this, I suppose I came to this conclusion, was when you go to World Youth Day, there's like catechesis days that they have in the lead up to World Youth Day. So you go to the English speaking site. This was in Portugal, in Lisbon. Okay. So we go to the English speaking site, and every day starts with basically a Wiggles concert. And you're like, oh, you roll your eyes. You're like, oh, here we go. Then we get to Mass. Okay. I still is one of the highlights of my World Youth Day experience. Bishop Robert Barron was scheduled to lead one of the catecheses one day. Okay. We get there. We start with Eucharistic adoration. So there's no concert. And then there's a Eucharistic procession that walks around the entire field, blessing people as he goes along. There's confession on the side. Then it goes from adoration into Mass. And then the day that catechesis finished, it finished. Everyone in that field was silent. And to a lot of these young people that I was with, that was more valuable to them than the 15-minute hype show jumping up and down that they'd experienced every other day at World Youth Day. What's that saying? In a world now, in a culture that's losing its way, that's losing its grip on reality, is that we desire truth. We desire goodness. We desire beauty. And this is what the Catholic Church can offer if you just stick to what the Catholic Church has always offered. It's timeless, this stuff. They had the best time. There was a real feeling of something just happened here, and we're out in a field. But you come back to Sydney and you tell particular people how good this was and what it was. Oh, it's just because they were overseas. They still prefer this. The audacity of people that have been trying this failed experiment for decades to continue trying this failed experiment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then you wonder why your parish is emptying. It's because they're all going to the parish down the road that's giving them the good stuff, that's just giving them what it is. And so I used to be a massive proponent of being faithful to your parish.
Yeah.
But if your parish isn't going to be faithful to the church, then go to where you're nourished, go to where you're fed.
Yeah, I've always tried to sort of advocate for that, but it's becoming harder and harder.
Yeah.
Because you can't blame people for saying, look, I'm getting nothing, nothing out of this. Like, yeah, at one point I don't want to hear a tambourine on a Sunday morning. But you know what you said before, how, look, it's great these people are sharing good news. Just do it outside over a cup of tea or whatever. It's the same thing with the music. I've always been of the view, and I get asked at my parish all the time, Francis, are you saying we should never listen to this music? I said, no. There's some music, it's fine. If you're driving and you're listening to like Christian music, go for your life. That's different to when you're inside the Mass. It's a totally different thing.
Yep.
The Mass, and the key word is like the timeless element is so important when we talk about the Mass. Because like it shouldn't just be a representation of, what music is in at the moment, what music people enjoy, what people consider good news. Like, no, it should be whether you go to a Mass 30 years ago or 100 years ago or in 100 years, you know exactly what's going on.
Yep.
Like God, it should be outside time.
That's right.
In that sense.
That's right.
And it also, I think, stems into church architecture as well. And this is a big problem I've had. I mean, the Maronite church, we've got a Maronite church being built up in the hills. And I mean, I saw it, and apparently it might change a little bit, might improve. I don't know. But my first impression was like, it looks like a convention center. We need to build something that is outside the time that we're in.
These things don't work. So we tried this in the 80s with a number of churches out west to make them multi-use spaces, multi-purpose spaces. They don't work. Now, you might say, well, yeah, they do work because we say Mass there, but then we also have our school assembly there. And then we also are able to have other events there. Okay, maybe logistically it works for you, but the long-term and detrimental effects it has on the faithful, you're not even thinking about right now. So think about this. You've got your little children, they're in kindergarten 1 and 2. Friday afternoon, the school assembly takes place in the church. Okay? What's at the school assembly? Presentation of awards. Year 5 might get up and do a little song and dance because they've been practicing it all week and all the parents need to be there with their cameras out taking photos of their children. I get it. Good, enjoy that, fine. But then you bring those very same children back to Mass on Sunday where they were just singing, clapping, dancing, running around. But now we're in the setting for Mass. What's that going to do to the psychology of the kid? Where am I? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
We know this at the cathedral. You walk into the place and you're instantly quiet. Place of prayer, everything elevates you to God.
And you don't even need to be told to be quiet.
You don't.
You just be quiet.
There's just an awe about it.
Yeah.
We can build churches like that. These multi-purpose spaces, these convention center style Protestant mega churches, they don't work. They don't work. And so we can build, we don't have to build St. Mary's Cathedral in every suburb.
No.
But we can build places of worship that actually elevate us. Architecture plays a massive role in all of this. And that was one of the other abuses coming out of the Second Vatican Council, where they just stripped everything. The recovation of the churches, they just took statues down. They wanted to simplify things. It became almost very Protestant in the way that a lot of these places looked. But just to go on your point, the multi-purpose spaces, they just don't work.
It's like someone using their theater room at home to do their studies.
Yep.
It's like you're probably not going to focus on your study sitting on ultra comfortable lounges in front of a 95-inch TV.
Yes. I was in the seminary for 7 years. I could not write my essays in my room. Why? Because my bed was right there.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I'll write a paragraph and might have a quick nap. Oh, that was a productive day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just doesn't work.
Doesn't
work. We need to be intentional about what we build, and it needs to be for God. You look at somewhere like St. Mary's Cathedral, not even local, go international. Go to Rome. Go to Vatican. Look at those beautiful basilicas. Nowhere did they go cheap on detail. Even when you get to the very furthest point of a ceiling that's 50 meters high, every detail is there. Why? Because even though the human eye won't see it, that detail glorifies God. And that's the space that we're worshiping in. So that detail can be seen by the angels. That detail glorifies God. That's why they didn't go cheap in that area. And now we're arguing in finance committees about, oh, what are we going to use to build? No, not brick. It's too expensive. We'll use this. We'll use that. And no one will ever see that part, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That's why we need a revival also in church architecture. And we need people that have an appreciation for that. So you don't get people on building committees thinking, oh, we're just building another house.
Yeah.
And that's why convention center style churches don't work.
I mean, I don't think I've ever I've never known anyone who's come from overseas after visiting some of these churches in Europe and didn't start with how old they are. Oh, this church we went to, it's 400 years old. It was built, took them 150 years to build, blah, blah, blah. And it's like they're literally speaking to how timeless, this building is.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we build churches that people want to visit in 500 years?
Yeah. And you see that
rather than knock down in 50.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you see how the space affects the worship. And so a lot of these places that have been built as modern day multi-purpose centers, it affects the way people worship. It also feeds the mentality of the abuse of liturgy too. We can do anything in this space if we want to, really. No, you can't. This is the liturgy. You can't do anything in this space. So there's a lot to be said for the way you see how it all connects.
Yeah, it's all related.
Yeah, it's massive. And so when we I suppose water down the liturgy, when we simplify it or complicate it with our own ideas, firstly we're admitting we don't know what liturgy is, and then secondly we're saying it needs to be more to bring the people in. But look at the flow-on effect that it's had. The people who wanted to change a liturgy so badly, and some of them got their way, have brought that into the way a school might worship. So you look at a school mass. School mass isn't a normal mass.
Yeah.
They were rubbish. Yeah. Absolute rubbish. You have to have 50 extraordinary ministers of communion with people that don't go to mass every Sunday and hardly know anything. They probably don't even
Some of them aren't even believers, yeah.
They don't even believe in the real presence, but I get to participate now. This is my time to participate.
Well, Father Ben, it's all about that inclusiveness.
We've
got to give everyone a chance.
But you think about it, if a person's knowledge of liturgy was lacking and now they're organizing liturgy in things like school.
How's it going to come out?
How's it going to come out? How's it going to be portrayed? No wonder a lot of us as adults, unless we went searching for it, our faith formation basically stunted at the level of year 9, year 10. And you'll find, and I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, you will find a lot of adults these days, when it comes to faith, when it comes to Catholic faith and knowledge, that's where it basically stops. That's why we can't go cheap on the preaching. That's why we need to offer catechesis and more adult faith formation. We need to bring people along because it's been stunted. So if you've got a stunted faith formation, then what are you going to pass on to our younger generations? The exact same thing.
Mm.
And then we have generations of people with a stunted faith formation and a lack of understanding of what the liturgy is and what it should be. And no wonder we're not getting anywhere. And now we need synods and we need councils and we need all sorts of meetings to wonder, where is it all going wrong? It's not hard.
Well, here's a good question. Where in Sydney can you get ongoing free catechesis?
Ongoing free catechesis. So we've got Fidelis for young people. That happens about once a month, run by the Catholic Uni chaplaincies, I believe. We've got. I mean, when I was at my,
would you call that, like, would you count that as ongoing in the sense? Usually, when someone's learning something,
like a program.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, I'll give it a plug. St. Mary's Cathedral, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, RCIA program, every week, all year round.
And anyone can go.
People that want to become Catholic.
All right. So, say I'm a Catholic.
Yep.
And I want to be formed regularly and methodically in the faith. Yeah. Where do I go?
The Sydney Centre for Evangelisation might be a good place to start.
Okay.
That'd be a great place to start. We are very blessed in Sydney that we're very well resourced. Now, whether or not priests in their respective churches have taken up the offer to actually hold these types of programs.
I think there's a priority issue in our churches. I mean, maybe I speak more for the Maronite churches, but we're not exactly short on dinner dances. We're not exactly short on parish fetes, feast week celebrations that go for like 15 days these days.
Yeah.
But they might hold talks every month or every 2 weeks. But where do their parishioners go for ongoing, regular, methodical faith formation?
Yeah.
How do you get from, year 9 faith formation to year 12, going once a month to a talk on a random topic? It doesn't happen that way.
You're right.
That's more of a supplement in my view.
Well, at the parish that I was at last year, I held an adult faith formation that actually had a rhythm to it, that had a flow to it, a consistency to it. And I did that once a month, and it wasn't an every week thing, but I gave people enough to think about until we met again. And that was the responsibility that I put on them.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to prepare this talk. I'm going to spend a lot of time preparing this talk for you. and that's the reason I can't do it every week is because it takes a lot of time to prepare.
There's only so much one man
material,
can do, right? I think it's something needs to be a little bit more.
But then, remember, you're baptized members of the church. You have a responsibility. So I'm going to give you some content and my resources. I'm not going, over the top here. I'm using the catechism. I'm quoting the church fathers. I'm picking things from things that I've heard before. A lot of scripture. I'm putting it all together. It takes a lot of time to do. But then I said to them, this is up to you now. Okay? I've helped you take the first few steps. Now, are you going to challenge yourself in prayer about this month? Are you going to ask yourself a question about this month? How are you living? How are you growing? Are you challenging yourself to grow in virtue? Are you doing everything in your power to avoid the vices and the occasions of sin you find yourself in? Are you challenging yourself on those particular topics that you were taught by your teacher? That's not very important. Don't worry about it. Or skim over the parts on contraception in the church. Don't worry about that. That's not relevant anymore because everyone uses contraception. Don't worry about that. Or you're going to challenge yourself as to why the church says no to contraception.
Yeah. Look, there's no doubt that there's a personal responsibility. And that's honestly, most of my formation was that way.
Yep.
I had to sort of seek it out just as you did.
Yep.
But there's no denying that the church can do so much more to provide. I mean, a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And a lot of people don't have the same capacity to sort of seek out methodical, ongoing formation. Like, I'll give you an example, right? This might be a little bit touchy for some parishes, but the Alpha program. You've heard of the Alpha program?
I have.
The Alpha program is a Protestant program. The Catholic version is the same as the Protestant version. I signed up to see, right? I think we can do better. I think we can do better. The Alpha program is a program it's made originally for non-believers to introduce them to the concept of God. Okay. Now, no doubt there's been some success in parishes. Maybe it's brought some people close to the faith. That's great. Good can come from all things. But we are the largest church on earth. Surely we can do better. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I understand what you're saying.
Surely we can do better than having to use another program that doesn't include anything explicitly about the sacraments and our Blessed Mother.
Yeah.
We are the largest and most resourced church on the planet.
Okay. I get you. And look, valid concern. I don't know enough about the Alpha program to comment on it.
Yeah.
But as you're saying that, I'm also thinking that whilst we may not have something specific that people can go to, I think this is where we've been able to see the benefit of the new media. So there are apps like Hallow, like teaches you how to pray, gives you plenty of meditation, scripture. Formed, the app Formed.
But these are all these are all private organizations or individuals, which is awesome. Like they're stepping up.
Yeah.
But it just makes me a little bit upset. Like, why hasn't the church stepped up?
You know what you can do with Formed, and I try to get this in every parish I go to. The priest and the parish pays a particular subscription, and the parish gets an account. Everyone in that parish can now have access to hundreds of movies, talks, audio books, everything. Why wouldn't you invest in that?
Completely agree.
It's specifically Catholic.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? Based off that, you could then start to develop groups within your parish and say, okay, we've all got the Formed app. We're going to do the 10-part series on the Eucharist over the next 10 weeks.
100%.
So if anyone wants to jump on board with that.
Like use it as an aid
to
facilitate 100%. But it doesn't happen.
I know.
That's the frustrating part.
The frustrating thing about that is that whilst we're not under-resourced, priests have differing and varying talents and gifts. Not every priest wants to be catechetical. Not every priest wants to put himself out there for a 10-week course. Like for me personally, I love doing that stuff. And I'd get people that I knew were able and were enthusiastic about it to aid me on the way. So I'm not doing it all on my own. But this is the thing. You come to church, people worship, they go home. You get a very small percentage hanging out. Father, what can we do for the parish? What can we do for this community that we live in? Then you have this really awkward encounter with them when it comes time to enroll their children into the Catholic school. How is it that you participate in the parish each week? Oh, we come to Mass. Oh, but, I'll start to volunteer now. Oh, because your child's enrollment's on the line. Now you want to volunteer. But where's that sense of belonging? So it's really a universal problem, but it's a problem that we need to face head on, and we need it not to just be the responsibility
It's twofold. It's both.
Yeah, it can't just be priests.
The church isn't just the priests.
Correct.
The church is also the people. You're 100% right.
It's the royal priesthood.
Yeah.
It's the royal priesthood. It's like by virtue of your baptism, we all have a responsibility now to participate in this. We must. And so it's not Father entertain me or Father feed me. No, we're a group. We've got to do this together. We're a family. We're a body of Christ. We have to do this together. So this is part of the problem, is that no one's really doing it. And now, I think we're spoilt in Sydney. Like we've got all of these agencies when it comes to evangelization. And it's like, it's on a platter for you half the time. Like just make a phone call and invite them into your parish. Could it be that particular parishes are just too comfortable being
maybe
the way they are?
Yeah.
Now that's not what I remember Jesus saying. So there's the great challenge to every priest, to every parishioner. Go out, evangelize, baptize all nations. When was the last time a priest at your parish invited, if you've got a family member at home that no longer comes to church, I want to see them here next week? When do you hear that? When do you hear invitations like that? You rarely do. A lot of work to do. I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but we definitely need an energy and an enthusiasm. We need to let the Spirit work through us. We're stunting the Holy Spirit here by just our levels of comfort. And sometimes our own stubbornness, and sometimes we're fashioning, calves in the image that we want. We're making the Mass something it shouldn't be. We're worshiping a God that doesn't exist because we don't understand who God is. There's a lot of work to do out there.
Yeah, there is.
And what I fear, and this has been my experience the last few years, is that unless you've really got the energy and the right people in the right places, we're going to continue to see these problems. We're going to continue. We're going to continue to have teachers that are teaching RE at a primary school level or just reading word for word from a textbook because they don't understand. And then they don't want to touch a question that a student might have of an existential kind of nature. And then it's like, well, I don't know how to answer that because I myself haven't even thought about that question before. So what a beautiful opportunity is to show this child something, show this student something, and you can't. And we're missing all of that.
I remember there were probably one or two religion teachers in high school who actually believed. And when they would fill in as like a substitute for other classes, they'd end up teaching religion just because they loved it so much. And the whole class would be captivated. And the thing is, it's like, it's not about trying to make everyone believe. A lot of these kids never believed after that point. But it's like they saw something that was worth looking at and at least investigating, at least asking questions about. One of them had a PowerPoint on the incorruptible saints. And he's going through all these incorruptible saints with such conviction, and all these kids, you think they're playing on their phones? And it's like, wait, hold on. What do you mean this? What do you mean that? What about this? Did they try this? And at least create those discussions.
Belief and passion.
It makes a big difference.
Massive.
And people see through a lack of conviction, you know? I once walked past the class and a teacher pulled me in. He was teaching another class and he said to me, you know, because I'd known him for a few years, he said, oh, they've got me teaching religion now. And he started laughing because he knows that I know he's an atheist. And he's like, all right, apparently the church, and like, you know, like how's a kid going to respond to that?
No way.
You know?
No way.
And so I guess for me, it's like the important thing is, let's be real. In most Catholic schools, and the Catholic schools are a discussion in themselves, but most Catholic schools, they're not predominantly Catholic, at least not practicing. That can't, we can't change that. I mean, maybe they can, but given how it is now, you work with what you've got.
Mm.
The next step is at least give them an authentic representation of what the church is and what the faith is before they're left to decide based off false or poor information.
That's hard to do when you're cancelling Catholic speakers and not allowing them into your school.
Oh, tell me. I actually don't know the full story. This was Jason Everett, right?
Jason Everett visited our shores a couple of months back.
Mm.
And in the Broken Bay Diocese, there was a number of parents and student groups or whatever that didn't want him to come into the school. And it was very interesting because he was locked in to come to the school. And Jason Everett has been visiting Sydney for 10 years, whatever. He's always welcome in every school because he just teaches authentically Catholic things.
Mm.
But our culture has gone in such a toxic direction. Add to the fact that you don't necessarily always have Catholics in Catholic schools. Add to the fact that the people that are working in Catholic schools have either had a watered down formation or they don't believe in it anymore because they've just gone with the current of the time. There was all this resistance to him and they ended up cancelling him.
Well, on what grounds did they resist?
They made up all of this stuff about him, about how he teaches a toxic brand of Catholicism, the way he addresses women is like archaic, and there were all sorts of weird things. And the ABC did a news article on him, and they offered right of reply, and he gave them right of reply, and they didn't include it in their story.
Well.
So all this kind of stuff happened. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to commit to having an internationally known speaker come to talk to you about the trying issues of our day, especially when it comes to teenage relationships, number one, be thankful that he's even saying yes to this. Number two, okay, if the atheist component or the non-believing component of students, teachers, and parents are uncomfortable with this, then just don't come. Opt out. As a parent, you have the right to say, my child is going to do this or do that. Opt out. But to have put, for the executive of those schools, shame on them.
For them giving in, that's
for
crazy.
them to have given in to cancel culture and to have cancelled him, shame on them.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, in the end, as Jason will attest to, it was all in the hands of Our Lady. So in the end, he ended up being exposed to thousands more students than he would have been because of the alternate arrangement that was made via Zoom sessions and all sorts of things. But what a shame that in our own Catholic schools, where we're going to have someone come out and talk to us about something authentically Catholic, that they would cancel. Now that shows you the state of affairs we're in. That's why we need to be very diligent when it comes to what our teachers are teaching our children. That's why you as parents, you need to have open forms of communication with your children to know what they're being taught, that your child will be comfortable enough to walk up to you after a long day at school and say, Mummy, Daddy, my PE teacher told me this today. Or my teacher said that families exist in many, many forms. Some families are a mummy and a daddy. Other families are a daddy and a daddy. Other families are two daddies and a mummy. Like, if that stuff has come out of teachers in Catholic schools, we need to push back on that stuff. We need to be unapologetically, authentically Catholic. We got to push back on that. That's not being bigoted. That's not being unfair. We're basically just saying, no, the authentic Catholic teaching is that God made man in his image and likeness. God made for the man a helpmate, equal in dignity, called her woman, and the two became one flesh. And his very first command was to go forth and multiply. And that's what they did. And that's the family unit. That's good for everyone. That's good for society. Good for everyone. That's not being taught in our Catholic schools. If your son or daughter at the age of 15, 16, 17 is engaging in some kind of sexual activity and you're put off by Jason and his message of chastity, then you as a parent have to look yourself in the mirror and be reminded that you're responsible for the upbringing of this child. So, but our schools contributed to this. Executives contributed to this.
Yeah, the fact they gave in was a huge validation.
Oh, it's disgusting.
And it's like, God forbid someone's coming to your school to tell your children, especially your daughters, but your children, not to just give up their dignity like it's trash.
Yeah. Jason was on our podcast, Against the Grain, when he was here. And when they cancelled him, it was just before we were about to shoot our episode. And I saw the look of dejection on his face. He was very hopeful and he left it in the hands of Our Lady and she prevailed in the end, which was great. But the look of dejection on his face, and he said to us, if I wanted to give Zoom conferences, I would have stayed in America with my wife and my children. The poor bloke.
Yeah, the sacrifice he makes.
The sacrifice he makes. And mind you, you speak to any young person that was part of or attended any of his talks, blown away. Girls crying. Guys like, yeah, I know what it means to be a man now. This is what I'm going to do. Girls not knowing, young women not knowing about their dignity, not knowing about their beauty. And he tells them, don't you ever let a man take advantage of you. Don't you ever think that you are defined by what you offer by way of your body in a relationship. What parent doesn't want to tell their child that?
That's what baffles me, yeah.
I know.
It's baffling.
But that also shows us...
Especially at that age. Like you're talking high schoolers.
The state of affairs in our culture today, whereby the people who are now parents don't care if their 15, 16-year-old is sleeping around. Like morality's taken a big hit, and these people, they're like, all right, fine. This was the way I was. This is the way my child is. They're going to learn. This is the way they're going to learn. We have to do better.
It's funny. I sort of found it funny when you said they claimed he had a sort of an archaic view of women and the way he speaks about women, because my criticism in the past of Jason Evert has been, mind you, I'll preface by saying I always have believed he has a net positive, especially for that age range. So I'm not against him as a speaker, but my criticism in the past had been at times I'd found him not to be hard enough on women. Like he was very sort of soft towards them and then just belted the guys.
Yeah.
Which I had like, it's a nuanced issue, but I had some issues with that. But then their problem is he's too hard on the girls. Well, he's just telling him, like you said, don't let a guy take advantage.
Yeah.
And if a guy indicates to you that he won't really validate your relationship or his love for you until you give him something with your body, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You would think that anyone...
That's a toxic message, apparently.
Yeah. That's insane.
And that wasn't worthy of being in a Catholic school, I should say, because it happened in a different diocese. But in a Catholic school, that was a message that was not worth hearing. You wonder what the heck is going on.
Those executives, but man, that's grubby.
This is where it is 100%. Shame on them. Like we need to get, honestly, I don't believe, and this is the problem now with a lot of the legislation that's coming through. If you are going to teach anything contrary to the Catholic faith in a Catholic school, we've got no space for you at all. Like go.
And they're trying to make that hard for us.
Yeah. And this is a thing, oh my goodness, one of the most intimidating pieces of scripture for me as a priest, and it should be for any adult, is if you hurt one of these little ones,
you're better off having a millstone.
Millstone tied around your neck and walk into the ocean.
Yeah.
How dare you scandalize one of God's children? How dare you? Like, this is the thing I'm most passionate about. If you are going to abuse the word of God, if you are going to indoctrinate, people love saying we indoctrinate children. If you are going to indoctrinate your child, if you're a teacher, even if you're a parent, you're going to answer the same way I'm going to answer as a priest. This is like now as a spiritual father, you can be an 85-year-old, but I'm still your spiritual father because I'm a priest. And so whenever I have to preach a message in Mass that might be a little bit difficult, I do it with compassion. I do it with care. I do it with love, but I don't shy away from it. Because if I don't give you that message, it would be better that a millstone be tied around my neck and I walk into the ocean. We cannot be scandalizing God's children, no matter what age they are. We can't be scandalizing them. We can't be corrupting them. And this is what's happening with these people. So if you're one of these people, just get out of the Catholic school system. Go and work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Honestly, no room for that whatsoever.
We fought a similar battle.
Sorry, last rant.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent that was uncomfortable with Jason Evett, take your kids out of the Catholic schooling system. Take them elsewhere. You have the right to parent your children, but you do not get to cancel our authentically Catholic speakers, and you do not get to silence us on our Catholic teaching that is divine, that is from God. You don't get to do that. And if you want to do that, I wish a lot of these executives would have the backbone to say, well, we don't need you in our school then.
Well, it just calls into question their own commitment to the faith, really.
It's hard when money's involved, man.
Doesn't need to be.
Your salary is dependent on your the number of your enrollments. That's hard for someone who's kind of lukewarm in the faith. They'll get their 30 pieces of silver.
30 pieces, eh?
That's what they sold out for.
Yeah. So I guess you're not happy about what happened there, huh?
I think we should pour a drink. I'm not happy at all what happened, mate,
No,
because
of course.
I've been a priest now for nearly 2 years. The amount of broken young men and women out there that are looking for love, that are looking for God and authentic teaching, that are looking for truth. These are the people that we can't. We've got to help them. We've got to give them Jesus.
Yeah, we had a bit of an issue at the Catholic Society. So when I was part of the Catholic Society at UCID, we're part of the union of all the clubs, and we had pretty much a clause in our constitution that said you need to be a practicing Catholic to be on the executive of the Catholic Society. It had been there for ages, but we submitted a different change to the constitution. They saw that. They're like, no, you can't do that. They did it to us. They did it to the Evangelical Union, which is like the Protestant club. And it was like a full-blown sort of war. They also tried to do it to like the Islamic Society, or at least the Islamic Society and the Jewish Society. Like we all sort of came together because it affects all of us, Imagine if one of the executives of the Islamic Society, like they didn't have to be Islamic. It just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
So we went to hell and back with these guys. There were articles in the newspaper. Funnily enough, I was because I was the president at the time, they wanted to take photos. And so that day I wore pants to uni and shoes, which I never wore. I was always shorts and thongs. And as I'm putting on dress shoes, I put on ankle socks. And I thought, who's going to see my socks?
Yep.
I'm wearing pants. Anyway, they take the photo. They end up using the photo where I'm sitting on the grass and you can just see.
Well done.
My pasty white ankle.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Wonderful.
Cheers, Abuna. You'll like this one.
Nice.
So we went to hell and back with these guys. They end up getting legal advice. After they got legal advice, I go to one of their union meetings. I have this full speech prepared. I go in and they're like, look, we've decided we'll allow you to have your stipulations. So their legal advice obviously wasn't in their favor.
Yeah.
Not only did we keep it, we tripled down. You must be a practicing Catholic whose beliefs align with the Catholic Church and the magisterium. And upon election, you'll be subject to questioning. Like, you're allowed to ask them questions on things they believe.
How good would that be if that was part of our process?
Yeah. But you know what? That's just a very small example. But the climate now is even different. And that was maybe 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Now the government's trying to pass that bill, right, where you can't discriminate at all.
Yeah. What I think, it's very easy sometimes, and I've just fired up, you've fired up. very easy sometimes to just look at these things and think, oh, but the very same response to, for example, the boomer abuses of liturgy and all that kind of stuff, I think is now starting to happen in the schools.
Yeah.
We've got good young men and women faithful that are actually looking at it as a vocation. I want to be a religion teacher. I want to be a religious education coordinator. And I've seen where it's worked brilliantly. So this already exists.
Yeah.
There are some Sydney Catholic schools out there where there are some decent, more than decent, very impressive RECs, very impressive family educators, very impressive religion teachers. We're not at every school yet. It's going to be a slow one. But even just to see the amount of young men and women practicing that are starting to slowly get onto executives positions.
Yeah.
You know, there's hope. There's hope. There is a revival, so to speak, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you did mention His Eminence Cardinal George Pell before, and it was something I wanted to ask you about. Now, before we spoke, I did tell you some of the things I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
And you're not one to shy away from any discussion.
No.
By the way, your podcast, Against the Grain.
Yes.
For those listening, Father Ben has a great podcast going.
Yeah. With my co-host, Anthony Altariff.
Where the father and son talk faith and footy.
Faith and footy.
Yeah. So it's a good vibe. Like, you guys have a good thing going.
A good time.
So feel free to tune in.
Thank you.
So you're doing amazing things on the internet as well, with the internet people, as you call them.
The beautiful internet people.
The internet people.
The bips.
And I think it's important. Look, let's be real. The Catholic Church has had a bad rap for some time.
Yeah.
Some of it justified and maybe some of it not. And one of the mistakes I think we've made as Catholics, especially those who are devout, is at times some of us have sort of wanted to avoid going down the road of these discussions because it's just such a, it's such a stain in our history. But the reality is, whether we talk about it or not, it doesn't change the fact that it's there. A lot of people are confused by it. A lot of people are hurt by it. A lot of people hate the church for it. So it's worth a discussion.
Yeah.
So most people know who Cardinal George Pell is.
God rest his soul.
God rest his soul. A huge case against him that everyone in Australia would have been watching. He was initially convicted, and then it was overturned in a high court appeal. 7 judges to nothing.
Quashed,
yeah. 7-0 is a lot.
Crunched in rugby league terminology. Crunched.
Yeah. So look, I don't want to get into sort of the details of the case because that's not really where I want to go with this. But I think that situation. I mean, I might just start by saying a lot of people claimed quite certainly his guilt because the legal system determined so. But that very same legal system absolutely crunched, as you said, 7 judges to 0, but apparently that doesn't mean much. But I think the broader question is around sex abuse in the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Now, I know a lot of priests. I know you very well. You and I catch up pretty regularly, always down for a feed, occasionally in Argila, we hang out.
Yep.
And what I found is people who are not exposed to priests who love their vocation, and that part's important because not all priests do, at least not in the way they act. You're just normal people. Like you and I just went out for a feed. We got a mixed plate. We talked. We had a laugh. We went and got ice cream. We hung out. You're a normal person.
I like to think so.
Yeah, I like to think so. You were keener on the whiskey than I was.
Yes.
And I think some people outside of the church forget that.
Yep.
Priests are normal people. They're normal men who lead extraordinary lives, but they are normal. And so I guess the question sort of becomes, what do non-Catholics make of what has happened in the church in regards to the sex scandals, sexual abuse, pedophilia, etc.? What's your response?
My response is this. Firstly, the question is non-Christians, non-believers.
Non-Catholics, yeah.
Okay.
Or even look, a lot of non-Catholics, even Catholics.
Yeah.
But those who are hurt by it, confused by it, or resent the church for it.
To the believers, we don't leave Jesus because of Judas. Okay? Jesus founded a church, whether people want to admit it or not. It is the one holy Catholic and apostolic church. It's a church that we belong to. That's the church he founded. There are very broken people in that church. Okay? This comes down to the question of sin. This comes down to the question of brokenness and trauma. Okay? People look at a priest, and I still remember the day of His Eminence's funeral in Sydney. As we processed his coffin out of St. Mary's Cathedral, there was a protest group across the road who had every right to protest, but they were throwing expletives our way that weren't very nice. A lot of those words were pedophile. They just kept, it's a guy's funeral. Give us a break. You have to remember that pedophilia or child abuse, first and foremost, is one of the most horrific things in the world. And better for anyone who ever offended, a millstone be tied around their neck and they walk into the ocean than corrupt one of these little ones. Let me start by saying that. But to the men and women within the church that had offended in this manner, what else is there to say? They didn't have the love of God in them. What are you thinking when you're doing that? When you even think that? That's demonic. That's a real flaw or trauma or some kind of wound that they're carrying that they've now inflicted on someone else. Now, I'm not passing the buck here, but last time I checked, pedophilia and sexual abuse also exist outside of the church. Now the response will be, yeah, but you're supposed to be men of the cloth. We hold you to a higher standard. Okay. If this guy was in love with his vocation, if he was praying, if he was battling his own demons, then he never would have done that. But it doesn't mean you leave the church just because less than, I think the statistic was 2% of people in religion have offended against a vulnerable person.
What do you mean in religion?
Like in religion in general. So I'm not talking just about the Catholic Church now. I'm talking about people of faith. So
of all religions.
It could have been an Anglican minister. It could have been a sheikh. It could have been anyone.
Less than 2%
yeah,
of all people involved in
people,
all religions.
Like in positions of what you might call clergy or religious or whatever it might be. The very, very small percentage. And that's what everyone goes after. And okay, rightfully so. There shouldn't be anyone that's offending against a young, vulnerable person.
But I think, Abuna, like more than simply those who have offended, there's a lot of hurt about those who didn't do enough about it.
Yeah.
Like there were cover-ups, were there not? Where there were moving of priests to different places rather than reporting them to authorities. Like, I think that's the main criticism towards the church. Like, what did you do to protect us?
Yeah, gotcha. No,
because I imagine myself at a parish.
Mm.
If I found out a priest was moved there after harming a child in another parish, I couldn't imagine my reaction and the reaction of those around me.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the reality now is that won't happen. But before, it did happen. And so we can measure what's happened 40, 50, 60 years ago by the standards of today. Very possible we always do that. We're in hindsight, you know. I don't know what's going through their heads when they're moving people around. Maybe this guy just needs a fresh start. So maybe it won't happen again if we give him a fresh start somewhere else. I don't know. I've got no idea.
Which is moronic.
Yeah. But I'm like, all right, this happened all that. And now look at what's happened since the Royal Commission and their recommendations came into play. All I ever hear about is safeguarding and child this and child that. You're setting me up, okay, rightfully so, because I'm a cleric. But you want me to go through all of this rigorous formation. Okay, I've got a pea brain, but I'm not dumb enough to be caught with a child on my own. I know not to be put in vulnerable positions. I know that if I've got a group of minors with me, there needs to be another adult. That's common sense, should be. But they drew now, like, I mean, the good things have happened since the Royal Commission and the recommendations. The Catholic Church in Sydney and all around the world, we've done these things. We've taken these steps. We've moved forward to ensure that this doesn't happen anymore. Now, in some instances, I believe we're overreaching a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's becoming a bit too much, because what we're starting to see now is that the humanity of a priest, much like the humanity of Christ was so important for him to relate to people, the humanity of the priest is starting to be stripped away. So with so much happening since the Royal Commission, you're basically wanting us to act like robots now. If a child runs up to you in the playground, what do? So my hands aren't on the child.
Yeah.
If they hug me.
It's this presumption that like, you're it's almost like a presumption of guilt.
Yeah.
You know, like because you're a priest, you must be guilty.
Yeah. And this is a thing that we have to, like, I've got to put up with the sins of the father. That's ultimately what it is. Okay. None of the guys that I studied with, you look at them, you think, wow, well-rounded young men. We got to, and we will do this. We will do this to fulfill our vocations and all of the legislative things that they need to do with government compliance and all that kind of stuff. I'll do whatever I need to do to continue ministry. Fine. If that means doing safeguarding stuff 3-4 times a year, whatever it is, I'll do it. But for the people that have been disappointed in what the past has held, I would just say it's not like that anymore. Okay? And you are not going to heal and you're not going to move forward if you don't start to seek forgiveness within your heart, forgiveness of those who may have offended or who did offend. We need to move forward and forgive. And that's the hardest part. No one wants to do it. It's easier to hold on to the hurt and to be angry than it is to go through that painful process of forgiveness and healing. And that's why forgiveness and healing is supernatural. That's why we need our Lord. We need him in that process. So I don't have the answers to this, but people have the right to be disappointed, but how long are you going to hold on to that disappointment?
And at what cost?
Yeah, and Jesus is calling you. He's calling you into greater intimacy with him each and every day. You're one confession away. You're one Eucharist away from being with him in the most intimate way. But you won't go to church anymore because Father so-and-so 50 years ago did this to a person you knew about. Or just even the thought of a religious person abusing someone stops you from going to church. It's not about that. It's about your relationship with Christ. And that relationship with Christ is fully expressed in the church. So you don't leave Jesus for Judas. You just don't do it.
Because of Judas, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because of Judas.
What's been what's upsetting for me is because I know many priests like yourself, and like I was friends with you before you were a priest.
Yeah.
You know, we were mates. We're still mates.
Yeah.
When you became a priest, it took me 9 months to start calling you father. You know, I don't know if you remember. There's just always Ben.
Yeah.
Now we call you Abuna. But it's like the 99.5% are being punished and looked at like criminals because of what that sliver of a portion.
Yeah.
And in my view, I don't shy away. They're scumbags. They're sick, and the ones that act on it are scumbags.
Yeah.
The hurt you cause a child, I mean, we don't even need to speak about it. Like no one's disputing that, right?
Yep.
But it's like because of that very small sliver, likely people who did enter the priesthood because they were lost in their own world and that seemed to be their way out. The rest are being punished. And now, you know, like I would think if I had children, I would want them to see you, not just like you are their spiritual father. You're like an uncle to them, you know? And it shouldn't be weird that my child would want to run up and hug Father Ben.
Yep.
But you would probably have to be like, I got to be careful. People are watching. People will see.
Yeah.
Sort of always on edge. And it restricts you from doing your job sort of pastorally. That's what's upsetting, because I know so many priests are just so down to earth.
Robs us of our humanity.
You're robbed
as I was saying.
Which is what I started with, right? Yeah. You guys, you're human.
Look, one of the really interesting things in all of this is, yes, there's an element that was pedophilia, but I forget the name of it for prepubescent and pubescent boys, young men turning into young men. There's an element of homosexuality in this as well. Now, that is something that the church has had to deal with. That is why, for a man that experiences same-sex attraction, unless he has proven to be able to be chaste, a seminary is not a good place for him to be, because it's an all-male environment. And you're basically living together all the time. You're praying together, you're playing sport together, you're eating together. Like, this shouldn't be news to anyone. It might be news to people, but this is the reality. And some people slip through the gaps sometimes. It's tough.
Yeah. It's always been a hard discussion for me to have with people, because I don't want, you never want to seem like you're defending anyone who's done something wrong. And I always open with an example. These are extreme views. I'll be clear. These aren't your views. Yep. These are my views.
Yep.
If someone's been caught for pedophilia, they can go and castrate them for all I care. Like, that's how infuriated I get, right? But
well, that they give sex offenders substances in prison to lower sex drives, and
here in Australia,
in America.
Oh, in America, yeah.
And that's the very same substance they give a young person that wants to transition.
Oh, well.
From male to female.
Yeah.
Very same thing. Like the puberty blockers that they give, that's the stuff they give sex offenders.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's
there you go. But yeah, like for me, it's sort of...
So chemical castration is what they're doing. Yeah.
But there's a couple of issues here. It's like, yeah, I believe this is horrible, and punish them to the highest extent of the law. Like, I'm one of those psychos that isn't even fully opposed to the death penalty, right? So I'm not against the punishment, but there is something else we have to acknowledge. The Catholic Church has always been a target. Christians have always been a target. We have always been a target. And we're judged, like, whatever happens within our church, magnifying glass on it, amplified to 1,000 levels, and that adds a level of complexity to this issue.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to talk about the targeting in a way that makes you seem like you're defending the wrong that's occurred. And I've never met a priest who's defended the wrong that's occurred.
No way.
Never.
Why would you?
And why would you? Yeah. But it's like when you're talking to people outside, it's very hard to strike that balance of, look, I completely agree with you. What happened here?
Yep.
Punish them, imprison them, whatever the country allows, do it. But we also have to be fair in our assessment of the whole church.
Yeah.
How many people are involved in this church compared to how many have done wrong? There are people doing wrong in every single organization.
That's right.
And not to compare crimes, because all crimes, like, I would consider this probably the worst of crimes. But you take something like the global financial crisis, where like one guy went to prison after. In everything that happened, just one random guy went to prison.
Yeah.
And it's like there are organizations everywhere who have bad apples, and some of them really bad apples.
Yeah.
And it just so happens the Catholic Church is one of the largest organizations on the planet. They are going to have bad apples.
Yeah.
And there are some priests and bishops getting up to some bad stuff, and it's known.
Yep.
We know, like the Cardinal McCarrick, ex-cardinal.
Yeah, he's no longer a cardinal.
He was defrocked.
Yep.
Completely, so he's not a priest either.
Yep.
Yeah. So we had the McCarrick, with like their bloody orgies or whatever they were doing.
Yep.
So it happens. We don't deny that it happens.
Yep.
But we know, again, you don't leave Peter because of Judas or Christ because of Judas.
Yeah.
We are going to have bad apples.
Yep.
So we're willing to fight on that front, but we also need that, like, hey, you need to work with us, because we're also like, you're projecting what's happened here on all of them.
Yeah.
To the point where, like you said, the whole hands up.
Well, I fear, and this is my opinion now, and I'm very strong on this opinion. I think to a degree, everything you said there is logical. It's completely logical what you said there. But I think that a large reason as to why people put so much emphasis on the couple of, rotten tomatoes in the church is because of what the church stands for in general.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's easier to say that I don't go to church no more because of the sexual abuse crisis. It's easier to say that. But for a person who doesn't know anyone that's been abused, for a person who has never really had a bad experience with the church, that can sometimes be a cover for, I don't agree with the church's view on abortion or contraception, or the church restricts me from living my life the way I want to live it.
Mm.
And because they did that bad thing, that justifies my behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible.
I really think that is part of it, because you think about it. If you're trying to justify to yourself that I don't need to do this or be part of this, what are you going to go looking for? You're going to go looking for the negative. And in every situation, the positive is Jesus Christ.
Mm.
So you're going to go looking for the most heinous, evil thing that the church has done to justify the fact that you no longer want to be part of this church.
Yeah.
So I see that quite often. That's why, and this is going away from child abuse now, but that's why we have a lot of Catholics that find it easier to go to Hillsong or to be Anglican or to jump from either being Maronite. We see a lot of Maronite people turn to Protestant because of the view on contraception or whatever it might be. We see that quite often. It's like, well, I want something. I want to make my own God. I want to actually form God in my image and likeness, and this is the church that best does this for me.
And the ones that do usually leave, you are right, and usually they cite something somehow unrelated.
Correct.
Like, the church is wrong. The Pope is actually a Freemason, and I saw him do the handshake, and we were never meant to be led this way, so I'm going to leave the church, and now I can live my life the way that I want.
Yeah. So I see that quite a bit. I see that quite a bit. And what does it come down to? It comes down to our terrible formation as we're growing up. You hear about all these people, like you hear about high-profile people like Sonny Bill Williams became Muslim. He knew nothing about his Christianity, but he had people around him that were passionate and knowledgeable, that were Islamic, and he became Muslim. You look at Andrew Tate, Christian, knew nothing about Christianity.
To his own admission as well.
Yep,
yeah.
Knew nothing about it, became Muslim. Look at a lot of our Maronites, a lot of our Roman Catholics, terrible formation growing up. If they actually knew what was the real deal about our faith, they wouldn't be in Hillsong Church at the moment. They wouldn't be in their own backyard Baptist church at the moment. They wouldn't be any of that at the moment.
Mm.
So it comes down to we dropped the ball, we stuffed up with formation, and look at people went and they want to fashion God in their own image and likeness, so they find the church that suits them. And for a lot of them, when you start to talk about the logic and the reason behind all of these things, most of them sometimes will start to cite, well, bad people in the Catholic Church, child abuse, this, that, and the other.
Mm. Yeah, on the whole thing of not being formed and being more susceptible to sort of other influences. I did a talk recently at St. Ruth's Parish, and one of the points that was essentially brought up was every Christian, especially every Catholic, you need to do the fundamentals, regardless of who you are, what level of faith you are. So, you need to attend Mass and liturgy. There's communal prayer, there's individual prayer, there's contemplative prayer, there's your rosary, there's serving of the poor. There's all these things you need to do.
Mm.
You can't say, oh, look, I don't really pray the rosary, and I don't really pray much. I'm more of a serving the poor kind of person. That's my style. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to have a style. Because when you say, oh, that's my style like Mother Teresa prayed. If you say, oh, that's my style like St. Francis of Assisi, St. Francis prayed. And the reality is you can only have a style once you've mastered the fundamentals.
Amen.
And
Mother Teresa went through the dark night for decades.
Yeah.
And she would, without fail, her and her community would do a holy hour every morning before they serve the poor.
You know the story when they complained?
And they complained, so she said, we'll do another holy hour.
Yeah, they said, we don't have enough time to serve the poor. We need to reduce our holy hour.
Yeah, so now we're going to do more prayer.
We doubled it, yeah.
That's it. You're spot on. You're spot on.
So Father Mike Schmitz said it really well. He said, look, all these saints, different fruits, same soil, same foundations. And so the analogy I gave to the guys at the parish, basketball analogy always, because it is,
of course,
it is the premier sport. It's like you can't rock up to the league. You want to start learning basketball, and you rock up to your training sesh and you're just shooting around. Coach says, okay, we're going to do dribbling drills. You say, no, I don't dribble. I'm a shooter. You've seen Steph Curry? That's going to be me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, hold on. Steph Curry learned to dribble, learned to run plays, learned to defend. He learned to do everything. And then when he was good, one of those things flourished.
Yep.
That's his style.
Yeah.
But you can't, where I'm sort of getting at is, imagine rocking up to a team and they're like, no, you got to do all the fundamentals. Say, hold on, no. If you're not going to let me shoot, I'm just going to go to another team and shoot.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're probably going to leave. But if you stay and learn the fundamentals, you'll be a better basketball player.
That's the notion of freedom that I usually talk about.
Yeah.
There's like, just because he's the best player to have ever played the game, Michael Jordan. Okay. You going to push back on that?
Look, we'll get to that.
Okay. So Michael Jordan was free to play the game of basketball. There was freedom. Okay. The way the culture views freedom now is anyone can pick up a ball, walk onto a hardwood and do this or do that. Anyone can do that. Okay. Michael Jordan was free in the sense that he could dribble with both hands. He could shoot with both hands. His agility and the way that he trained was perfection. The way that he defended was perfection. The way that he ran the team and led, he was free to do anything he wanted on the basketball court within the parameters of the game. That's true freedom. But when we talk about our faith, it's a bit harder than that. But to truly be free, and that's what it ultimately is, God gives us the law of freedom in our hearts, those commandments to be free, to live a life free from sin, to live a life of peace and joy. God gives us that. So we need to work on these things to cooperate with God gives us in order to be free, to then feed the poor, to then pray your rosary or to sit in contemplation for a couple of hours. We need to do the basics, the fundamentals to be free to do all of that. So when someone says, I'm free from pornography, it means that, okay, you've got a laptop at home, you've got a tablet here, you've got a phone there.
Yeah, despite the access.
To it, it's not a thing. Because you know that you've had to work hard to break free from it, that you're not going to put yourself in a position anymore to access it. And you know what's going to happen when you do put yourself in that position. So I'm free. I can weigh up the good and the bad, and I can choose the good and avoid the evil. And so that's what true freedom is.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan had that freedom. Best person to ever play the game.
I like how you threw that in. You started with that and you ended with that.
Yeah, it's bookend.
Yeah. Now, look, I do agree. And that's why I suppose
Jordan's the best ever. Wonderful.
We'll get to that. Good. We'll get to that. But I agree on the point that basically where I was going with it is before you leave the game or the team, learn the fundamentals.
Yeah.
If after that you say, hey, this team isn't for me, I don't like how you're running this team, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, true.
But don't walk away before you've learnt the game.
That's right. And
now, on Michael Jordan.
Too many people do that.
Too many.
Yeah.
Look, on Michael Jordan, I've rocked up here. I'm not wearing my jacket, but you saw my jacket.
He wore a Bulls jacket. Everyone.
I wore a Bulls jacket with all the championships on it.
He did.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I asked you to wear your worst Lakers jacket, but you did explain how you're going to come in your habit appropriately, which is fine.
Different show. And
that's fine. That's fine.
I'll wear it on my podcast next week. You'll see it. It'll be the worst jacket you've ever seen.
I want you to wear it when I'm on your show.
Okay. Done.
You've extended an invite when I come.
All right. Done.
I want you to wear it.
Done.
Okay. Here's my issue with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Or the mythology around him.
The mythology.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. Go.
Firstly,
present your case.
Firstly, it was
this is a great example in civil conversation.
We'll see how civil it stays.
I'm sure it'll stay civil.
We just got to slow down. We'll see how civil it stays.
It'll stay civil.
Yeah, of course it will. No. Look, this is my thing with the whole Michael Jordan thing. If you said to me, who do you think is the greatest player of all time? The GOAT? MJ. I would still say that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the gap is as big as the MJ fanatics make it. And this is why. In the 90s, they added more teams. Even the players at the time said, the league's been watered down a little bit. That's the first thing.
Yep.
Secondly, there was no social media. Why does that matter? There's this aura around the concept of Michael Jordan. Like, there are some games you can't even find footage of. It's just, you just hear about him, right? It's like there's this aura about him. I would argue he's one of the biggest athletes in history in terms of worldwide fame in an era of no social media.
Yeah.
His salary at the time, adjusted for inflation, $63 million, which is now the biggest salary in the NBA, Jason Tatum, right? So there's this aura about him, which makes him like this unattainable, mythical god with a little g, right? That's the second thing. The third thing is there's some shady stuff with his stats. Have you heard the recent stat conspiracy? It's not even a conspiracy.
Oh.
There were some games where he had more steals than the other team had turnovers. And they were all home games. So there's all these like games that people are finding, home games, where the stats are a little bit askew. Now,
it could have happened.
It could
have happened.
The miracle in Chicago.
Look,
I would still say he's the GOAT.
Yep.
But I don't like some of the reasons. Like I said, there's this whole aura around him. Like he's this untouchable.
Yep.
LeBron James gets a lot of crap because he lost finals. It's like, what's better, doing Michael Jordan and lose in the first and second round? Like, some of the reasoning, I'm not sure I agreed with. Now, you could argue the aura contributes to the whole GOAT debate, and that's a fair argument.
Well, when we talk about the GOAT debate, people have broken it up into varying categories and what do you consider GOAT?
What do you consider, yeah?
Because, I mean, look, if it's championships, it's not even Michael or LeBron.
Exactly, yeah.
So we're not
Bill Russell. Or,
so 11 rings, something like that. So we're not talking about, we have to talk about the overall.
It's everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
I get that. The fact that you said he's the GOAT, even there's an aura around him, I'm happy. And I'm not one. I'm not one. I'm not one that adheres to the whole. There needs to be a massive gap between Jordan and LeBron.
Yeah,
I don't believe there has to be a massive gap. In the words of the famous prophet Vin Diesel, whether you win a race by
an inch or
a mile, it's still a win.
He's a great prophet.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
That's true. No, it's definitely still the GOAT.
Look,
I just think
Jordan, for his finals appearances, 6 times, 6 MVPs.
The pure dominance.
Pure dominance, the show up in the clutch.
Yeah.
The one team, except for when he retired.
Yeah.
Like the one team aspect of it all.
Yeah.
Like all of that. And you look at Jordan, and on those teams, on those repeats, when you look at that, you think to yourself, okay, look at the guys he had around him. For the most part, it was a stable of players that were steady.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, right? Like you can't.
LeBron couldn't get that stable of players due to management and organization. They wouldn't. I don't know if he had the pull back then. But he changed teams.
Even when he had the pool, he never quite got it.
Yeah.
I mean, him and Kyrie had something going, and then Kyrie walks away.
Yep.
You know, Scottie Pippen signed a 7-year deal with the Chicago Bulls for dirt cheap. He was stuck there for ages. You know, they got Dennis Rodman. They had great Steve Kerr. I mean, their whole lineup was amazing. Great coaches, especially with Phil Jackson.
A lot to be said there.
You know, like, here's another question. Imagine Kobe and Shaq stayed together because they got along.
Mm.
How many would they have won?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, look, there is an element of the stars aligning in some sense for Jordan, but look, he's still the GOAT. I'm not taking. Look, I've got the jacket. You saw it.
End of discussion.
It's there.
Then.
I'm going to leave it behind.
Why
camera.
are we even talking about it? End of discussion.
Yeah. It's just Jordan, Michael Jordan.
I get it.
He was also psychotic.
Yeah. Did you watch The Last Dance?
Oh, phenomenal.
So, what struck me the most in The Last Dance is how dirty he still is.
Yeah.
That they disbanded the team after 98.
Yeah. He doesn't let go of his grudges.
No, he's done. He's done. Like he's obsessed.
Yeah.
Like that type of obsessiveness is idolatry.
Yeah.
That's his God. Like him wanting to remain at the top and be the best with the team that he had and to continue to win. I mean, he couldn't let go of the game.
No.
He came back, he played for Washington. And now he's like part owner or I don't know where he's up to.
I think, did he sell the Hornets?
Charlotte?
Yeah, Charlotte Hornets, yeah.
I mean, there's so much there and he's still making so much off the Jordan brand each year.
Oh, he's worth like 1.5 billion
It's
or that's not
ridiculous.
including the Hornets actually. Yeah.
So like you saw him in The Last Dance, like that's not healthy.
No, it wasn't.
That's not healthy at all. That type of that's an example of what it can do to you.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, just to jump a bit here, but when we've interviewed some of the athletes that we've had on our Against the Grain podcast, one of the most impressive interviews we've had was with Stephen Lawrence, the AFL Premiership winner. He won his flag, he won his title with Hawthorn, and the way that he was talking about it on the show was, meh, you know, I was married, I got my family, they're way more important. And I have my love for God. That's what made things amazing.
Yeah.
So that's the balance that we look for in the show. But when you contrast him to a global athlete like Michael Jordan, who was just obsessive with the sport,
look,
like
even
he would ruin rookies in his own team.
Yeah.
You've heard some of those stories.
Yeah, I mean, he's punched on with them.
Oh.
Yeah, he's done the whole lot. It was interesting, even the timing of the release. So they released that right after the Lakers won the 2020 premiership. LeBron got his 4th.
Yep.
And it's like this whole, he's just reminding everyone who really is the GOAT. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was even the release, but in it, he's got almost full creative control. Obviously, it's his documentary.
That's right.
And still, you could still see how salty he is about like Isaiah Thomas and, you know,
to this day.
Claims he did not have him, you know, cut off the US team. Apparently he said he didn't want him on there. And it's just crazy. And he even admitted to creating situations in his own mind to motivate him.
Yeah.
Oh, like this guy said this to me. The guy's like, I never said anything to the guy. You know, so it's just crazy the price you have to pay to reach that level of greatness. And then the next question becomes, is it worth it?
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell. With that type of attitude toward the way things ended, I don't think he's in a healthy spot.
Yeah.
And it's perfect example of people that basically have everything materially, but where's the happiness if he's still dirty about something?
Yeah, apparently he doesn't deal too well with dissent. Like him and Charles Barkley used to be best mates. Now they don't really talk at all. And it was because Charles Barkley told him the Hornets will never be successful while he has yes men around him. He needs people that actually challenge what he's doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it became this big, he was offended by it, and here they are. Charles Barkley's great, but
he's funny.
Yeah, he's funny. He deserved a ring.
Yeah.
He deserved one.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so you were an NBA prospect before you did your knee, right?
I played for many years. Never an NBA prospect, but basketball is definitely my love.
Yeah.
When it comes to sport.
Yeah.
I love, even now at St. Mary's Cathedral, I oftentimes shooting hoops and just to clear my head. And
you follow NBA?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you support?
So I'm a Lakers fan, but from way back.
Yeah.
From way back. I had my moment with the Bulls in the 90s,
Yeah.
I think as everyone did.
Yeah.
But Lakers fan from way back.
Like pre-Kobe way back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Showtime Lakers.
Yeah.
The NBA finals this year were very interesting with Boston and Dallas.
Very interesting, yeah.
And I was very impressed with the Boston head coach.
Joe Mazzulla. What a beast.
So
he honestly, he's the only reason, like I hate the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
I hate them.
Yeah.
Like I just can't stand every time they won a series,
Yeah.
I'm like, someone's got to deal with these guys. I can't stand them. I never want them to win.
Yeah.
But when they won and I saw Joe Mazzulla, I was like, man, you can't hate the guy.
Did you see his T-shirt? The T-shirt he was wearing when they won the comp, it was the trophy on the back and on the front, but first let me thank God.
Oh, that's mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then apparently the bloke does a rosary walk around
Before
Madison
every
Square
game.
Garden before every game.
Yeah. Yeah, he's phenomenal.
And then when he was asked about, did you meet any of the royal family?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, who? Jesus, Mary, Joseph.
That's the only royal family he's familiar with.
That's the only royal family he knows.
Even when they lost, they either lost a game or a series. I'm trying to remember what they lost, and he was asked about it. And he said, look, yesterday I met 3 girls with terminal cancer.
Yep.
Like you're just reminding everyone.
Perspective, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, I thought I was helping them by
Yeah.
meeting them,
Yeah.
but they were helping me.
Exactly.
The guy's just, he's the only reason I'm happy for
Yeah.
Boston, just because it's him.
Well, when before that final series started, they were talking about it was either the final series or the one before, talking about first time 2 African American men are head coaches. So that's going to be an interesting storyline.
Mm.
And then he responded something along the lines of, I think the more interesting storyline is the first time we've had 2 Christian coaches.
Yeah, he said, how many of those have been Christian?
Yeah, yeah.
And everyone just goes silent.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care that it's awkwardly silent.
I love it. I love it. God bless him. Great
awkwardly
witness.
silent, yeah.
Great witness to his faith.
Yeah, 100%. And he's a great coach.
Mm.
He's a great coach.
He did well.
Then we had to watch Jason Tatum. Did you see Jason? Have you seen the memes around Jason Tatum's celebration?
No, I haven't.
So when he was being interviewed,
Yeah.
he sort of looks up and screams, we did it.
Oh, so similar to Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything is
see that.
possible, yeah. Then he goes to some club and he's like, everyone wanted to know what I'd do if we didn't win.
Yeah.
I guess we'll never know. And he drops it like Kanye.
Yeah.
And he's just like mimicked all these greats. It's like, come up with your own celebration.
Way to be original.
Yeah. And it's funny because like the concern for them was what people would say if they lost.
Yeah.
But they've had more. They've had more to say since they won.
Love it.
No, I've got to go watch some of these guys before it's all said and done. Like LeBron, Steph Curry. Steph Curry's my all-time favorite.
Yeah, and they just let go of Clay.
Klay Thompson to the Mavs.
Yeah.
For less money, by the way.
Less, but I think he'll be a good role player for Dallas.
Yeah.
He opens up the court now for people like Kyrie and Luka.
Yeah.
Like those guys will.
Because if he's hot, he's dangerous. Yeah.
Then you can't double team anymore when he's on the court.
Yeah.
They were double teaming Luka.
Yeah.
You're going to leave someone like Klay Thompson open?
I hope he's
Good
in
luck.
form. He deserves a good season.
I hope
a good
so.
couple of seasons.
Good luck. Good luck to him.
Now the Dubs are trying to sign what's his name, Markkanen,
Mm.
the tall
And,
guy from Utah.
The 55th overall pick in the NBA draft, Bronny James. That is a storyline.
Yeah.
And like, okay, he's not going to start for the Lakers. We know that. But the first time that he steps foot on a court with his father is going to be pretty special.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
It is special, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just funny how that happened with JJ Redick as coach.
Yeah.
Because if JJ Redick still had a podcast, you could imagine what he'd have to say about that.
Yeah.
But he can't say shit anymore. Like
everyone was talking about nepotism, and all of the greats were coming out and saying, don't even talk to us about nepotism because it's existed in the NBA for decades.
Yeah.
People that you think shouldn't have a role, shouldn't have this, have that. Owners appointing their daughters here. Like, look at the Buss family.
Yeah.
Were the owners of the Lakers. Look at other people. Oh, your son's in upper management. Your wife got given this role.
Yeah.
Like, it exists. The kid's half talented, and he's got his father as a mentor on the same team. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
No, it's good. No, it's going to be phenomenal to watch. I mean, like LeBron James has probably played against, I think, 4 or 5 father and son.
Yeah.
Not at the same time.
Yeah.
But like, I whooped your daddy 20 years ago. I'm about to whoop you.
That's got to do something for the ego.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Now he's got to do it with his son.
Yeah.
And he just signed a huge contract. 104 million over 2 years.
Yep.
And he was willing to take a pay cut
Yeah.
if it meant he got Clay or DeMar DeRozan, who's going to the Kings, by the way. There's a lot of change. A lot of change.
A lot of movement in free agency.
A lot of movement. We've got Chris Paul to the Spurs.
Yeah. He'll be a good leader for a young team.
Well, he's got Wemby on his team. All he has to do is lob the ball.
Yeah. I don't think Chris Paul has the minutes in him anymore. I don't think he's a 35, 40-minute player anymore. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, probably not. We'll see. Well, Abuna, it's been a pleasure. You clearly had a lot to get off your chest.
I wasn't ranting, sure.
No, you were good.
No, good convo.
No, you were good. That's what we're here for.
At the end of the day, I think when we talk about things and express ideas, we put ourselves in a better position because we get to think about these things. And I've been thinking about these things for a very long time. And it may not be, politically correct to say a lot of the time, but it's important that people know that, okay, it's okay if you think these things. Like, I wish no ill will on anyone.
Yeah.
I think I think we're able to talk about and criticize and critique respectfully what people have done and how they've put us in the positions that we're in.
Yeah, what people want more than political correctness is honesty.
Yeah.
And that's why long form podcasting, I think, is helping with a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Because you're not just sitting down for 15 minutes with some news channel and they crop it down to 5.
Yeah.
Or 45 down to 5. It's like, no, we sit down for 1, 2, 3 hours, however long it takes to hash it out.
Yeah.
So I do think we are involved in the solution. And what you guys are doing on your show,
yeah,
mixing faith and footy, again, I think it's important to normalize people of the faith. Like, we've also got a life, but our faith becomes a part of that.
That's right.
But yeah, definitely talking about it. That's the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
I've always been of the view that regardless of if I agree or disagree with someone, if we sit down for a couple of hours and have a drink, we can probably find something in the other person we find respectable.
Yeah.
Whether it's a trait, whether it's an idea, whether it's one single thought, like something has to come up.
Yeah. Well, look,
in a few hours.
You conceded that MJ is the best ever.
I've always.
I'm happy. This has been a great podcast.
No, he definitely is.
God bless you, man.
You make me want to watch The Last Dance again now.
Yeah, I might. I watched Last Dance during the last COVID lockdown. No, the first one.
2020.
Yeah.
That's when it came out.
Yeah. So I watched that. I watched that at Punch Bowl with a good mate of mine when we were able to exercise and walk around the block and stuff.
Yeah.
We'd finish with watching The Last Dance.
When they let us walk outside.
When they let us walk outside. Story for another day. But no, that was a great series, great show. Good stuff.
No,
just on the podcast, like I'll use the platform because we're here. Like, I had a young man approach me at a men's conference when late last year, actually, when Matt Fradd and Jason Everett came out for Sydney Catholic Youth and they did their tours and everything. Young man walked up to me and said, "I've been watching your podcast, and my old man and I, like it's amicable at home, but it's not close, Like there's not much in common. I'm in the faith. He idolizes footy." He goes, "I introduced him to your podcast, and it's the one thing we sit together and do."
Wow.
And so, and I say that not to, compliment what we do on our podcast, but it is a testament to what we're all doing in these spaces, is that we're allowing people in a non-intrusive way to come into our lives and to listen to the discussions that we have, agree with us, disagree with us, but you can watch it as a family. You can listen to it in the car, on the way to work, stuck in traffic, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
What we're doing collectively is a good thing considering how much garbage is actually out there.
Yeah.
And so we never underestimate. And I tell my team all the time, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the clip that goes viral. It's about the life that is changed by what we do.
Mm.
And if that's only one person,
then so be it.
Then so be it. So I'd encourage you to continue to persevere in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the format of the show is great. It's chill. It's laid back.
Yeah.
It's just having a chat.
Yeah.
You forget that there are cameras.
There are cameras here. Yeah,
oh,
that's
yeah.
right.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? It's been a struggle at times. Obviously, the goal of anyone running a show on the internet is to grow.
Mm.
But you never want to lose sight of what the goal is. And that's to, like for me, you know, like I'm not a Christian podcast. For me, I just sort of want to introduce people to perhaps a new way of thinking, whether it's my way or my guest's way, whatever it may be. And every now and then I'll have someone message me, oh, Francis, this episode was great. I actually, just before you and I caught up today, someone messaged me a couple of hours ago. Oh, Francis, I just listened to this episode. The point about XYZ was really enlightening for me. I'm just letting you know that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I thought, honestly, that means the world because it actually helps me refocus.
Keep going as well.
Just focus on the quality. Yeah, keep going. Focus on the quality of the content. And if it means that a smaller number of people, like, so be it.
Yep.
You know, I had someone, a young guy. We talk a lot of shit to each other. He said, Francis, your podcast, what are you still doing? You're only getting like 5 views on every video. And so I said to him, he's like 18. I said to him, well, unlike your generation, you know, we're not the type that delete a photo off Facebook or Instagram if it doesn't get enough likes because we're worried we haven't displayed enough social validation of who we are. It's like, no, that's not what we do. I said, well, that's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem.
Yeah.
Is that we're so concerned with what other people think of us online.
Yeah.
And we need that validation to continue.
That's right.
Not realizing the ones that had validation had none for years.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
A lot of them had nothing for years.
Yep.
You know, and you've heard of Mr. Beast?
I have.
He's pretty much the biggest YouTuber in the world. He's getting close to 300 million subscribers. It's insane.
Yeah.
So like he's not far away from me. Yeah. Just a couple 100 mil.
Mr. Beast is a great example of perseverance, firstly.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. He spoke about, he's done a lot of videos where like he podcasts where he talks about, like gives advice.
Yeah.
He says, listen, your first X videos, 0 views. Just accept it, make the videos, get them out.
Yep.
And then every video after that, increment on one small thing.
Yep.
Eventually, it will start to happen. But it's like, imagine what people were saying to him when he dropped out of community college or whatever it was and is sitting all day researching how to make a better thumbnail.
Yeah.
I mean, who's laughing? Who's laughing now, right?
Laughing to the bank.
Yeah.
I used to watch some of his videos with my nephews, which we don't watch anymore because he's had some friends go in a particular direction that I'm not approving of.
Yeah.
So I don't, and you think, and that's the other challenge when it comes to being almost like a staple, a name, a brand that people know for years. The following that he's built, 300 million, coming up to that, whatever it might be. And in an instant, there's some kind of woke ideology that filters through in what you do.
Yeah.
And you've got 300 million little kids, teenagers, everything that have gone on this journey with you for so long and they love you. Some of them idolize you. And now this happens. And you're like, well, you've got them. You've got them.
They're not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so this normalizes culture, changing culture, rapid decline of morality. This normalizes all this stuff. You know, the originals to do it were maybe not the originals, but the real heavy ones were the Kardashian clan.
Yeah.
They're solely responsible for the way women view beauty. Most women anyway. They set the trends. What your lips should be, how curvy you should be. They set the trends, and look at what it does to a generation of people who have been with them from day one.
You know, it's crazy. Kim Kardashian has a clothing brand. What's it called? Sketch or something? Skims? I don't know what it is. Some clothing brand. And one of the tops that she has made is not only very tight, but it's actually got like artificial nipples in it, so that nipples show.
Mm.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah. I don't know why I'm laughing. I was just like...
It's because you weren't expecting me to say that. That's
I wasn't
why.
expecting nipples to come up in this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you're mentioning standards of beauty, and it's like she's created a top where they show, like, so that women can have them show for them.
Yeah.
But they're not real.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, that was a bit.
But that's
was a bit random to throw at you.
To speak to the point, look at the way that they dictate what fashion is and what you should look like, and an expression of beauty.
Yeah.
And I think it was only the other day that that Kylie Jenner came out and had a little breakdown over the standards that people hold her to. Hey, I'm sorry, but you've put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you want to live a life where you don't want your lip fillers anymore, you don't want your fake tans and your implants and all that kind of stuff, fine. You have every right to go against all of that now, but be prepared for the backlash.
Yeah.
Because you put yourself out there.
And that audience was there for that.
Yeah.
So when you take that very thing away that they came for, they're going to revolt.
And it's interesting that she had a cry while the camera was rolling.
Oh, isn't that the funniest trend?
It is. People, you see it now. People are just
so funny, man.
They're going after reaction after reaction.
Yeah.
So you saw her. Why are people so mean? Well, there's one very easy way for you to distance yourself from these people, and it's to not have social media at all. If you took social media away from these types of people, they would spiral into deep depression. Because that's all they want. They want the reaction. They want the likes, the followings, the brand endorsements. They want everything.
But I reckon if they stuck to it long enough, they'd come out better.
I hope so.
But it would get worse before it gets better.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
The withdrawals would be insane.
Oh my goodness.
But even the thing about recording themselves crying, there's lots of videos on the internet, right?
People having breakdowns.
Yeah. And they're usually like random, like there's, I wish one day I'm going to have a screen so we can look at videos.
We'll do a reaction video.
Oh, it would be hilarious if you see some of these videos. This one chick like sitting on her bed and thrashing all around. And the caption was like, POV, point of view, me coming to terms with the trauma I've experienced. And like she's recorded herself thrashing around on her bed. And how do you expect the internet to react? Yeah. The internet's interesting because there's so much like dumb crap on it. But there are some hilarious people on there.
Oh yeah.
And they will find you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what happened in the minute preceding this video? Did you come and sit on your bed, set up your camera, press record, fix your hair, and then start thrashing around?
Yeah.
Or like some girl in a hospital where it's like, oh, when you lose another patient and she's like leaning down, hands on her knees.
I saw that video.
And it's like, did you just set up a camera and then walk into the...
And you've actually experienced the trauma of losing a patient.
Yeah. And the first
thought is, I've got to put this on video. Talk about disingenuous.
Mate, the narcissism.
I saw a video a couple of years back of an influencer picking up garbage on a beach. And when her videographer, someone was filming her do this, and when the videographer stopped recording, she put the garbage bag down and walked off the beach.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's so bad,
So
man.
just for getting views. So I'm going to show you I'm an environmentalist, but I'm going to leave the rubbish where I found it.
Yeah.
It's like these people, you're right, narcissism, and it's growing.
And when it started, like not when it started exactly, but one of the first occasions I saw this was those people that would like go up to homeless people and hand them a burger. And it's like, oh, what are you giving me this for? Oh, I just wanted to do a good deed today. Like I just wanted to help someone. Yeah. And there's like a camera.
There's a camera rolling.
I just thought you're recording yourself like for the sake of the dignity of that person.
Yep.
Don't record.
Yeah. Just do the good deed.
Just do the good deed. But it's almost like if you do a good deed and no one recorded it, did it even happen?
It's God's plan, according to Drake. I actually preached on that once at one of the high schools.
Yeah.
And they were freaked out. Why is this guy quoting Drake in a homily?
He's a priest. He's supposed to be a robot.
Yeah, that's right. But if you've seen the film clip of God's Plan,
no, I don't think I have.
It's Drake basically letting his left hand know what his right hand is doing.
Hmm.
When our Lord says, if you do something, just do it out of the goodness of your heart.
Yeah.
But his whole video clip is him going into ghettos and poor places and giving people money and all this kind of thing. And it's like, this is God's plan. It's just like you're recording it and it's received 1 billion views on Vimeo or something. It's like pretty funny.
It's the narcissism that's scary.
Yeah.
It's very scary and it's only getting worse. I spoke about it last week with Andrew on the show. Like there's girls that just post videos of them literally mouthing the words of a song while the song is overlaid.
Yeah.
Making cute little gestures with their face and they get hundreds of millions of views.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happens when that goes away?
Yeah. And that's part of the whole, fabric of internet culture now and social media is people are becoming famous for nothing.
Yeah.
Like they're becoming famous for nothing. I saw a clip, Daily Wire commented on it. They did a bit of a review
reaction
on it.
video.
Yeah, I think it was Brett Cooper that was doing it, saying how disgusting it was. A little 4 or 5-year-old girl knew the lyrics to like a Cardi B song. So this 4 or 5-year-old girl is like dropping F-bombs and talking about private parts and everything, rapping, and her parents are in the background laughing. Like, oh, how cute is she? Look at what she's saying. She's swearing at 4 or 5 years old. Like, what do you think she's going to become when she gets older? If you're allowing her to do this now. Like her mind isn't developed enough to understand what these words are, let alone meaning. But you as parents, take a good hard look at that piece of scripture. It would be better that a millstone be tied around your neck than you
scandalize
one of these little ones.
Like the theme of our podcast.
It is. I like it. It's been a good theme.
Look, it's dark, but necessary.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
And it just goes to the importance of listening to the words of Christ. Like you and I, Francis, we've been made in God's image and likeness. There is an inherent dignity that's been bestowed upon us. And we crap all over that dignity every time we choose to sin or lead others into sin.
Yeah.
No good. That's terrible.
And
that's why Jesus uses such intense imagery, because that's what's going to happen to the person that does that. And we haven't done any good by normalizing or like fluffing sin about, oh, it's not that bad. Everyone does it. It's all good. Yeah, well, our Lord said that would happen too. The road to heaven is narrow and very few take it. And the road to perdition is wide and spacious and many go down that route. Very unpopular pieces of scripture, but our Lord said it. He used those words.
Yeah.
So when are we going to get serious about all of this?
I mean, he couldn't have been stronger in his words, really.
They were his words.
Yeah.
Whenever I preach about these words or give this message, I'll put my hands up every time. Jesus' words, not mine.
Yeah.
What do you mean? That Jesus is supposed to be loving? And yeah, he is loving. He went to the cross for your sins so that you wouldn't have to spend an eternity without God. Now play your part. Get serious about life. Love God. Do good. Avoid evil. Help out those in need. That's all. That's what we're called to do.
Yeah. Even MJ had teammates.
Love it.
Last thing on that quote. One time, Dr. Robert Haddad was doing a talk at our church on the sexual revolution. And I'm just sitting in the front row and he's doing an amazing talk, as you'd expect from Rob when you guys have him on, as you'll see and you've seen. Anyway, he brings up that quote and he says, here's what we need. We need to have a foundation called the Millstone Foundation that goes around and hunts people who are taking advantage of children, who are abusing children, like some underground, foundation called the Millstone Foundation. And he's talking about what they're going to do and how they're going to hunt people and some big operation. Then he stops, he looks at me, he goes, Francis, I think you should do it. And I was just like, what? Did I just get commissioned to start some real life Batman style vigilante organization.
All you need to do is invest in a truckload of millstones.
Yeah.
And then just hunt down the people that are doing the wrong thing and just leave it on the porch of the front of their house, ring the doorbell and run.
Yeah, just let them know.
And I wonder what this means. Yeah. And inscribe the scripture verse on the back of the millstone.
A little warning.
A little warning. God gives us many of them. If only we would open our eyes and ears and heed his advice, which is my prayer for everyone.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of that quote from, I think it was Pascal. God reveals himself just enough that we find him if we seek him, and not enough that we don't, if we don't seek him. And so he gives us what we need.
Amen.
It just depends.
Amen.
On us. Abuna, it's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
We did the wrap up to the show half an hour ago.
We actually did, yeah. We did. We started the wrap up, and that you took the opportunity to take up the option on your contract to extend another half an hour. And we did. It worked out all right.
I love it.
Until next time, it's been a pleasure having you, and God willing, we'll get you back in the future.
Happy to be on, mate.
And for those listening, Against the Grain podcast with Father Ben Saliba and Anthony L. Tariff, father and son talk faith and footy. Great show. You really know how to make the faith digestible and accessible. And you apparently are a wizard when it comes to predicting the picks for Origin.
Yep.
You've been laughed out of that studio multiple times.
I have.
Only to come back and have the last laugh. So if anyone's interested, head over to Against the Grain. And until next time.
God bless you, Francis.
Thanks, Abuna.